We're all good? We're all good, great. I'm gonna call this meeting to order. It's a regular meeting of the Morris Township Planning Board, October 17th, 2022. Legal notice required in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act has been satisfied, and a statement certifying same will be executed. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. On the roll call, Sonia?
I'm looking at the board to see Mr. Quillen.
Well, I can see up there.
Okay, is there none?
Here.
Mr. Dorothy?
Here.
Ms. Van Order?
Here.
Mr. Flowers?
Here.
Mr. Bai?
Here.
Ms. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. Nunn?
Mr. Lesso. Mr. Lesso will be late.
Oh, he's gonna be late.
He'll be late. And I'm here.
Okay, let's hope he'll be late. Quillen, are you here? Mr. Quillen? Mr. Slate?
Here.
Mr. Flynn?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Fishinger?
Here.
And I, Mr. Benoit?
I'm here.
And I, Sonia Santiago, here.
Do we have the Zoom meeting with
I'm sorry?
Mr. Quillen? Will he be the only Zoom participant?
Yes.
And if he tries to join us, you'll know?
Yeah, the name will pop up.
Yes, his name will pop up.
Okay. All right, because I'm going to do that now too.
Do we have members of the public on, Chip?
I'm sure there are. Zoom's open.
And I just tried joining so we can see. Okay. Okay, we have a lot. You see George?
Yeah, George is there. Mr. Quillen in?
Yes.
There he is. There we go.
So there he is.
Mr. Quillen?
Hi, everyone. Yep, I had the usual technical difficulty not being able to join as a panelist when I just clicked on the meeting agenda. So I had to do it the circular way here by joining as a member of the public. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
That's okay, George. We waited for you. So I'm going to amend the order of the meeting. To recognize a few former board members and I'm sorry. We'd like to recognize two former board members. One of them couldn't be here this evening, but longtime board members who are no longer with the board. And it's hard to fully recognize the participation and the importance of people who have dedicated their time personally as a volunteer for these boards for many, many years. We sitting up here know what it's like to do that, and we feel like we're participating in the public good and giving back to the community. And people who have been doing it for a really long time, who have done it for a really long time, deserve recognition for their time in really helping the township to operate. First recognition, these are resolutions. Would It's for Mr. Lohman, Jeremiah Lohman. What I'll do, I'll read it. They're not long. I'll read the resolution and recognition that we have for them, and you can see we have it in a nice framed resolution for them. Jeremiah Lohman, resolution to Morris Township Planning Board in recognition of the appreciation to Jeremiah Lohman. Whereas the Planning Board of the Township of Morris desires to acknowledge the many years of devoted service given to this board by Jeremiah Lohman, and whereas Jeremiah Lohman served as a valued member of the Planning Board for 16 years, from January 2006 through December 2021. And whereas Jeremiah Lohman has employed his expert planning skills and displayed his diplomatic wisdom in analyzing and deliberating on every application, and whereas Jeremiah Lohman consistently demonstrated high moral and ethical standards and outstanding character and leadership qualities as a model for each member of this board to strive and replicate, and whereas after 16 years of distinguished service, which has been a significant asset to the citizens of Morris Township, Jeremiah Lohman has retired from the Planning Board. Now therefore be it resolved by the Planning Board of the Township of Morris on this 17th day of October 2022, that the Planning Board formally recognizes Jeremiah Lohman for his 16 years of diligent public service with this board and for his untiring dedication to the residents of Morris Township. Do we need to put a vote on this, or this is by unanimous consent?
Yeah, no need to vote.
No need to vote on this. Mr. Lohman couldn't be here this evening. But I wanted to make the recognition into the record for his service, and we really appreciate all his time. The second one is for Mr. Vinsker, who is here happily with us, Franz Vinsker. And I want to say also that these are recognitions that we would have made a while back, but because of COVID, we weren't able to do that. So we're happy that now that we've come back to in-person meetings, we're able to do this in person. Resolution of the Morris Township Planning Board in recognition and appreciation to Franz Vinsker. Whereas Franz Vinsker has rendered to the citizens of Morris Township for 36 years. A faithful service, having served as a member of the Planning Board from 1984 to 2020, serving as its vice chair from 2004 to 2019, and as its chair in 2019. And whereas the Planning Board desires to acknowledge the many years of devoted service given to this board by Franz Vinsker, and whereas Franz Vinsker has always put forth his expert planning skills, diplomatic wisdom, and infallible analysis to every application. And whereas Franz Vinsker has consistently demonstrated the highest moral and ethical standards and outstanding character and leadership qualities in establishing a high standard for each and every member of this board. And whereas Franz Vinsker has been a tireless volunteer and has benefited the township with his knowledge, talent, and insights in caring for his community, and has made this board a better municipal agency and has made the Township of Morris a better place to work and live. And whereas due recognition should be given to Franz Vinsker for his exemplary public service to the board and the township. Now therefore be hereby resolved by the Planning Board of the Township of Morris that the board does hereby recognize the profound influence that Franz Vinsker has had on the development of the township, and that his absence will be a distinct loss to this board and the township residents for whom he worked so diligently, and that he has earned the deep respect of all who were fortunate enough to work with him and the board, does hereby extend his appreciation to Franz Winsker for his years of dedicated service. I hereby certify that this is a true copy of a resolution of the Morris Township Planning Board duly adopted at a regular meeting held October 17th, 2022.
Yeah.
That was very, very true. Mr. Quinn or any board members who would like to add anything to this? I was on the board only for about a year and a half during the time that you were here, and I thoroughly enjoyed sitting next to you and having our conversations. And I very much appreciated you as a mentor toward my being here on the planning.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a few comments. It's so good to see you in person, and I'm so glad that COVID is finally lifted to the point that we can recognize you in person. I know it's long overdue. So I too, I thoroughly enjoyed serving with you for a couple of years on the planning board. And I saw you in action on the planning board for many years before that, not 36, but for a long time. And you just did a fabulous job on the planning board. You know our community, and you contributed so much. So I really appreciate that. And I wanted to highlight also, you served as well. I don't know how many years it was, but you served on the Environmental Commission. How many years was that? Ah, okay. I know, I hear you. But I saw you in action at the Environmental Commission many times, the same knowledge of our community. You brought that to the Environmental Commission as well. And it's so appreciated. And I know all those meetings, all those years, all that time is time away from your family as well. So I just want to acknowledge that, and we're very grateful to them for sharing you with us. And thank you so much for your service. It really. Pardon? Yes, I know what you mean. Anyway, thanks so much, Franz. You were really great to work with, and thank you so much for your service.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just say a few words. Franz, I've only been on this board for 10 months. I can only imagine the amount of time you put in over 36 years. But it's good to know, as someone who grew up in the township, to know that, while I was growing up and seeing how the township has developed over the past 30 so years, that people like you were on the planning board, doing the best thing that they could for our town, representing our township the best they could. So to me, it's comforting to know that the folks you served with over the past 36 years were folks like yourself who put so much time and of their own time in, away from family, as Ms. Wilson said, for the betterment of our township. So thank you so much for all that you did, volunteering for your community and having a huge impact, not just during the years you were there, but for the decades to come, because of all the plans and site plan reviews and master plan amendments that you did over those years. That has a lasting impact on this town, and it will for a very long time. So thank you for everything you've done.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Should we move on, or? So we'll move on with the agenda. Ron, where'd you go? You're hiding? There you go. Okay. So the rest of the agenda, we have a public hearing, continuation, Red Bulls Arena. Sonia, would you like to read this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is PB Red Bulls Arena, Inc. for site plan, block 9101, lots 4 and 5, 101-103 Columbia Road in the OL 40 PUD zone. This is a continuation from the August 15, September 12, September 28, and October 3rd public hearings. Applicant proposes to construct a New York Red Bulls training facility for professionals, academy, and youth sports teams to include outdoor fields, building used for administrative and business office, gymnasium, and field houses, athletic training and fitness, classrooms, dormitories, and indoor fields, food service operation, physical therapy, and ancillary facilities related to the athletic training.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Flynn, do you want to lead us off as to where we left off or what?
Sure.
to-
At
Thank
the
you.
last meeting, which was October 3rd, we heard from the applicant's lighting professional. He went through his presentation for the board. We did get through all board questions and public questions of that witness. And as I understand it, we leave off today with the applicant beginning with the architectural component of their presentation.
Okay. We'll do architectural as well as landscape architectural?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's really, first, let me say, that's a tough act to follow. And Mayor, and my math is correct, you only have 35 years and 2 months to match that level of service. So you got your work cut out for you. But we really have one presentation, a cohesive, comprehensive presentation regarding architect, and the landscape architect. And it's really intertwined. So I would ask that they go as one. We have Kristen Bird from Gensler, and we have Gerardo Aquino. He's the CEO of the SWA Group. And the Red Bulls really, with their commitment to really have the best facility possible, we're lucky to have two best-in-class professionals. Kristen flew up from Texas. Gerardo flew in from LA, so we're lucky to have them, and we'd ask the board's indulgence to have them both go, one comprehensive presentation, and then answer questions.
Yes, I would prefer to proceed that way. Everything is basically related,
Yes.
and it will make it easier for the board as well as the public to ask questions and not worry about whether it fits one witness versus another
And
witness.
the
So,
perspectives that you're going to see and that the public has been asking for really relate to both the landscaping and the architecture. So I think it melts well.
okay, great. Then you may proceed.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Mr. Rassiopi, I have a
Yes.
question for you.
Yes.
I had in my notes that tonight we were going to start with the traffic
Yes.
person.
Mr. Keller could not make it tonight. He'll be at our next meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Keller's our traffic expert. He had another engagement, so he was unable to come tonight.
Okay. And we have these two witnesses tonight, and then the next time it'll be Mr. Keller.
And Mr. Keller wears 2 hats. He's actually 3 hats. He's gonna testify as to the traffic. He's also our planner, and he's also gonna speak in speaking about traffic and circulation. He's gonna speak about the parking lighting as well. There were some questions about parking lighting, and we said that maybe Kristen would talk about that, but we think it's best that Mr. Keller speak about that. Right.
Okay, thank you.
So we're a little out of order, but that's just juggling schedules.
Can I just say one thing? When I was on the Zoom call last week.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me, you have to use the microphone. You're not.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, you can, of course, take comment at any time. It's at your discretion, but
Right. Well,
I just wanted to mention that I couldn't hear him speaking the last 2 times I was on the Zoom call. So
all right,
just to
thank
ask
you.
him to use the mic, that's
Yeah, we
all.
tried to emphasize that last time as well. So please
Wow.
remember
I can't wait
to be
go
close to
home.
the mic.
I can't wait to go home and tell my wife that because she's constantly saying I speak too loudly. So thank you very much. Okay.
wanted to swear in? swear that any testimony you're about to give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
And why don't you provide your credentials for the board?
yes. So I am Kristen Bird. I am stand up.
To the
Speak up. Hi, I'm Kristen Bird. I am a licensed architect in the state of California, a recent transplant to Texas, and I've been with Gensler since 2014, working exclusively on sports facilities, not only training facilities, but venue architecture as well. I've been in the profession for 20 plus years, and I've seen a lot with regard to training facilities. So I'm happy to be here in front of you guys today to chat through this project.
I will say that Kristen is licensed in Texas,
California.
California. And we do have a New Jersey licensed architect who will sign all the plans. He's here tonight, Jack Perota of Gensler as well, New Jersey. So if he needs to confirm anything, or he will be signing the plans.
Okay.
But we ask that Kristen, who has an expertise in sporting facilities, is deemed an expert.
That's fine. That's good. You may proceed.
Thank you. All right, shall I share my screen?
Yes.
All right, so thank you for having us today. I'm going to give you a summary of the items we'll be talking through so that we can kind of all be on the same page in terms of where we're going with this presentation. The first topic that can be quite brief, but I wanted to talk about user group access. So how the different user groups are getting in to the building and where they're coming from. The second topic that we're going to talk about today is building massing, heights, and location on the site. So we'll go through each building individually and talk through those items. Then the next topic we will talk through today are the materiality and the facades of the buildings. So everybody can get a good idea about the exterior building palette that we are going to use. The fourth area we will talk about today is signage and graphics. So we have a page specifically from our Gensler graphics group that I will chat through and talk about the signage, whether it's illuminated or not, and the positions on the site. And then the last portion will be the neighborhood renderings. So we have many views that are both day and nighttime views, as well as views that show full tree growth, as well as initial planting growth, 1 year of growth. So, and those are highly integrated between architecture and landscape. And then at that point, I will pass off to Gerdo Aquino, and he will talk through the landscape presentation, and then we will be available for questions after that. All right.
Okay.
So I will try and be explanatory and but brief so we can get through this testimony today. So here we are. Everybody can see the illustrative site plan on the screen. The first topic I wanted to talk through was the user group access. So we have three.
Kristen, when you
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, when you
Yeah.
use an exhibit, can you describe that exhibit?
Yes.
Is that, it looks like that's either a colorized version of something that was submitted, or maybe that you
Yes.
included some lines. So we would want to mark it as a separate exhibit.
Yes, we should. This is an illustrative site plan that was based on the submitted site plan that was more of a black and white typical architectural site plan.
So Nick, we're up to 16.
Yes.
16. So as I was mentioning, there are three major user groups who will be accessing this building, one being the pro players and coaches. So I will zoom in on the site plan to look at the southeasterly corner, which is showing the pro parking lot. All of the pro players and coaches will be accessing this lot. That will be a very sort of low impact lot. It's not as large as the one up in the north, and it's heavily wooded around the perimeter. They will all come from this pro parking lot through this path into the southern part of the building right here. You can see my cursor. Then going up to the north, one of the other user groups on this property will be the academy players and parents. This parking lot in the north that I'm circling with my cursor is the main parking lot that they will be parking in. There is a loading zone, a drop-off zone right here on the southerly portion of this parking lot. And they will be dropping off, and academy kids will be coming through the gates to access their fields right here, 5, 6, and 7. And then last, we've got the Red Bull staff. So anybody that's not a coach or somebody at the one-off where somebody will be visiting this facility, they will be parking in this parking lot here as well. And they will be taking this southerly path behind the viewing area, which are the spectator stands, and in toward the main entrance of the building right here, right off the entry plaza. Okay. So in terms of the overall building massing heights and site location of each building on this campus, I'd like to start with Building A and talk about the Pro and the Academy building. So this building right here, labeled Building A, is located on the eastern edge of the site, as we all know. The program in this building includes the day-to-day operations for the Pro and the Academy teams, coaches, and training staff. So most of the people that are accessing the site during the day will be in this building here. The overall massing of this building is divided into 3 parts. So you'll see the central section here, which is the 3-story portion. Then you've got this wing on the right, which says Academy Dorms. And that is, well, let me go back. The central wing, I want to give you the heights while we're here. So the overall building height to the roof is 49 foot 5 inches. When you move to the right wing, this is a lower building. This is only 2 stories tall, and it's 34 feet 6 inches. So we made a conscious decision to step the building down as we're approaching the more residential areas. This was something that was very important to do because we didn't want there to be a large 3-story mass right at the edge of the site, much like the previous submission that was approved with the multi-story parking structure on the west-east edge of the site. The left wing of the academy is this lower bar that juts out north of this turf training area. This is a 1-story component meant to be a outdoor elevated deck. This is 20 feet high to the top of the roof, and it has a 3'6" guardrail on top of this glass guardrail. The other 2 buildings have 3-foot high parapets all around the perimeter, which fall within the regulations for the zoning. All of the elevator overruns on this main Pro Academy facilities building are no higher than 15 feet in height, also complying with zoning regulations. Once we dial that in with our vertical transportation consultant, it will probably be much lower than that. All mechanical equipment on these roofs will be screened. The current facilities mechanical equipment is actually resting on the 3rd floor slab. So there's nothing on top of the roof. It's all resting 1 story below and blocked, completely screened with parapet walls. One thing that I wanted to mention is that we really thought about this edge of the project site and the existing terrain that was along here, because we wanted to be a good neighbor and make sure that we were doing everything we could to help screen the building from the adjacent neighborhoods. There was an existing berm on site, and what we did is we actually lengthened that berm so that we would have more coverage going toward the north edge of the site, and then planted many more trees, as Gerdo will attest to in his testimony, to help with the screening. Okay, so let's go through Building B. Building B, more on the north edge of the site, is the field house building. This building is a support building. for the competition field, and it contains visiting team locker rooms, official locker rooms, and also locker rooms for the Gotham FC women's team, as well as a concessions area for when games are happening. There will be food and beverage, no alcoholic beverages, as I understand. It is a one-story building, rectangular in shape, and it's 20 feet 5 inches high with a 3-foot high parapet. There are no mechanical units on the roof of this building. We made special provision to have that be on the ground floor with a cutout in the slab so that it would be completely hidden and not be seen from the other buildings. Building C is the indoor half field. This is something that actually used to be a full field, but we did cut this in half due to site constraints. It's located on the north edge of the site, and it's primarily for academy teams and occasional use by the pro teams. Really, this building has a lot of use for inclement weather. It's not something that will be used all the time, but it's an essential component of training for a world-class facility. It's one single volume. It's 64 feet 5 inches high with a 3-foot high parapet. The height and the shape is really important. It's a result of the function of the interior space. When you've got a large span building like this, you really need to have quite a bit of clear space on the inside to make it functional. So we have 45 feet of clear space inside, and that is what's driving the height of the volume. We are still within regulations on the overall height of this building. There's no conditioning equipment on the roof for the indoor half field. There is the potential to place solar panels on the roof of the indoor half field. And if those are installed, we will also comply with the height limitations and restrictions reflected by the zoning code. Building D and Building E are the future pro women's building and the future girls academy building. The women's pro building is a 2-story building that is 35 feet 5 inches in height, and it has a 4-foot high parapet. It is located on the northwest edge of the site. It will house the future women's pro team, including locker rooms, dining space, training spaces, and coaches and staff offices. This building and the Girls Academy building will make up one basic mass. It's rectangular in shape and will form a small interior courtyard to bring light into the center of the project, of the space. And all rooftop mechanical equipment will be screened and sitting on the level 2 slab. The Future Girls Academy is very similar. It's a 2-story high building, 35 foot 5 inches in height with a 4-foot high parapet. It will house the Future Girls Academy teams and includes locker rooms, training spaces, and coaches and staff offices, as well as the Girls Academy dorms at level 2 along this western edge. Then the last of the buildings on the campus are really more utilitarian in nature. We've got buildings that we're calling F1, 2, 3, and 4. And I will point them out on the site plan as we go around. F1 is the groundskeeping building, another building that is essential to the functions of a training facility. It's on the north edge of the site. It's 28 feet in height and has a shed roof that slopes down toward the north edge of the site. It has its own service yard area that will be gated, as well as a carport area and storage along this eastern edge of the compound, with a few parking spaces for groundskeeping equipment. Then F2 is what we're calling the groundskeeping annex. This is down here on the southwest portion of the site. It's a small building, about 15 feet tall with a 3-foot high parapet, and the shape and massing is a simple rectangle. F3 is this red box here on the plan. And the reason that it's shown as a red box is to show that it's actually getting reincorporated into the future academy once that is built. But during phase 1, we will build a very small component here that's about 2,000 square feet for a parent's lounge. So something where the parents can be closer to fields 5 and 6 and be close to the fields that their children are playing on. And then the last of the accessory buildings, F4, is over by field 9. It's really just restrooms and field storage, essential to the building, to the field, because it needs facilities on this edge of the site. 15 feet tall with a 3-foot high parapet. The shape and massing is a simple rectangle. And as I mentioned, all of these last 4 are more utilitarian in nature, will be simple in form, massing, and materiality. Okay. So I'm going to switch to the exterior building renderings and talk a little bit about the materiality of the buildings on the campus. So I'm sure everybody has seen these. I think these have been out in the public for a while. This is a view from the southeast corner, looking northwest.
Are we going to mark these as A17?
A17, yes.
And it's a series of 4 slides, it looks like?
Correct, yes. Thank you. So as you'll notice, the main building has what looks to be a wood-like tone or texture on it. And this is one thing that when we started studying this site, we felt was really important to honor the materiality by thinking of the highly wooded pockets of trees that surrounded the site. So what we are trying to do is create a sun shading thin system for this main building, which you'll see in some of the other renderings as well, in order to not only help with solar heat gain and shading, but also honor the highly wooded areas in and around the site. We're also using passive shading in the form of louvers, fens, fritted glass, and deep overhangs to help the buildings with the intensity of the sun. We are also using green walls along some of the building's facades to add to the composition, to blend the natural elements with the man-made. So I think we can go through some of these other renderings. Here is a view if you are hovering above the competition field, looking back toward the main building. You can see the wood fens wrapping around the second story and wrapping around the north facade here and coming around to create a design element. Over to the right, this is that Academy Bar building that has the Academy locker rooms and coaches' offices with that outdoor terrace deck on top. In the foreground to the left, you can see the spectator stands for the competition pitch. And then in this rendering, we've swung over to the eastern side, looking at hovering above the visitor parking, looking back toward the main building itself. What you're seeing in front is a glass facade where you enter the building below a deep overhang. And then this is the auditorium up at levels 2 and 3. Over beyond the trees here, you're seeing the Academy dorm building nestled in the foliage. And then over on the right, this is the back side of the spectator seating. And in this rendered view, what you're seeing is from the west looking east. It's a long view shot across the fields. And right up in the middle of the screen is that outdoor terrace where we've got ramping and stairs that act as sort of an outdoor seating area. If the academy kids need a rest or the coach wants to talk to them about something, they're right in the middle of the site with access to their fields on the north. Okay. I'd like to introduce another exhibit. This is just a quick one for, I guess we would say it's 18.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Talking through the materials palette. As you can see, we are using a lot of the typical materials you would see on a building: concrete, glass, metal panel. We're also introducing fiber cement panel, which will clad the walls below the wood fins. And then in a few instances, we will, of course, introduce mechanical louvers where needed, as well as translucent wall panels where we would like light, but maybe more privacy. Okay. All right. Then the next thing I wanted to discuss a bit was building lighting. So I wanted to mention that the only building lighting we are using is what is code compliant. We're very conscious about having dark sky importance. So the only code compliant lighting to allow for egress. So we are keeping those to minimum foot candles to achieve safe egress from the buildings. The exterior building facades are not being externally illuminated. All right, I'd like to introduce another exhibit.
Okay.
19. This will be signage and graphics. So I'd like to quickly review some of the signage that is occurring on the campus. And maybe the best way to do that is to zoom into the site plan, and then we can look through the illustrations, the elevations that have been created. So we've got a few different types of signage. We've got vehicular signage, and then we have branding and sponsorship signage. So the vehicular signage you will see dotted around at the entry and exit of the properties, as well as along the drive aisles and paths to guide people to the correct locations in the parking lots. Currently, at the intersection of Columbia Road and then the Honeywell Road and then the Service Road, we've got two internally illuminated signs. The first one is here right at the corner, and it will be the primary entrance sign. Then A2 is really more of a secondary entrance sign because it leads mostly to the guardhouse and gate, and it provides sort of a back entrance into this parking lot. Then as you go into the campus, we've got directional and informational signage to point visitors toward the appropriate parking lot. These would not be internally illuminated. Only the two at Columbia Road would be internally illuminated. These non-illuminated signs make up the majority of the signs that you will see on the campus. And they are all of these marked as, I believe, D1, I believe. Then the other type of signage I wanted to chat about was branding and sponsorship signage. So we have a few, this may be better if I should go down here. We've got a few branding and sponsorship signs on the sheet here. This larger sign that is right behind the spectator seating is really a primary entrance sign. It's freestanding right behind those spectator seats, and it's meant to be the identifier for the complex once you've arrived at the site. Another type of branding signage that we have is a sculptural sign. This is meant to be a fun moment for Academy kids to be able to take a picture between two laser cutout bulls more of like an Instagram moment for kids that are on the academy team. We are looking at ground lighting illumination for this, but we need to study this a bit more to make sure that we are within our limits for the Dark Sky Act. And then one other type of branding that we are showing is a rooftop branding, and this is on top of the indoor half field. So basically it's a logo that is painted on the roof membrane, and that would be in this location right here. Then I believe there's one more type that I wanted to mention, and that is G2 and G3. This is the north side of the field house building and the east side of the indoor half field, and they are being reserved for a mural. So the idea is that it would start and then wrap onto the other portion of the building, and I can show you where that is. So basically it would start halfway down the field house building and then stop and then pick up here and then go to the north. So almost like an L shape. And we thought this would be a great location because it's where the academy kids are dropped off. So that could be a fun moment for them. All right. One more exhibit. So this would be 20. All right. So these are a packet of 36 rendered views that we have done in response to questions and comments and concerns from the community. So what this is, and we have a key plan that shows all of the views. Basically, we've got views that show both full tree growth. We have views that show 1 year of growth. So basically when they're originally planted. And then we also have a few that are nighttime views as requested. So I think what we can do is go through these quite quickly, and then we can revisit for comments and questions.
Hey, Kristen, there's 36 slides? Or
There's 36, yeah. We tried to be quite extensive.
37, including the title page, right?
It might be 38. There's 30, let's see. I think 36 total.
Okay.
36 total. So there's going to be 33
Okay.
views. Okay. All right. So in terms of a key plan to help orient us, we will start along Stockton with views 1A, B, and C. Then we have views 2A and 2B, which are, and I'll zoom in, views from Aldrich Court toward the site. We have views 3A and 3B from, is it Delano or Delano? Delano? Yeah. And then a view right at the end of the street for view 4 looking straight up Stockton. Then we swing around on Prescott and look both east and west. We move to the townhomes on the west and take a view from within that neighborhood back up toward the site so everyone can see how big of a slope there is between the two site and the neighborhood. And then we finish with views 7A, B, and C, which are from the Green Knolls neighborhood and from Featherly Road. All right, let's dive in. So I know some of these have been published. Not all of them have been published online. But I think the important thing to know is that as the design has progressed, we have made sure that we are updating things to match. So when we get to certain views, I will point out what has changed from what has been published previously. So view 1A from Stockton Drive looking toward field 9. This is demonstrating full tree growth. And then this is the same view demonstrating 1 year of growth. So basically right after the trees were planted. So you can kind of see the difference if I go back and forth. 1B is turned ever so slightly, pointing toward the visitor parking. And then this is the initial growth with the trees that will be planted. We've also got a night view of this area. So this is showing the field lighting as well as the minimum required illuminance for the egress path for the bollards. And we've got the illuminated sign behind. As you can see, it is quite dark in the foreground. And one thing I wanted to mention is that we did, after we prepared these rendered views, we did run them by Bob Zoller, who had no involvement in their preparation, to make sure that they were realistic. And he said that he commented that these nighttime renders depict a good representation of the field lights. While he can't comment on anything else, he can comment on that since he is the field lighting expert. Then moving forward to view 1C from Stockton Drive toward Prescott Road, looking straight ahead with full tree growth. And here is the view with 1 year of growth. So as you can see, it still seems quite wooded. View 2A from Stockton Drive and Aldrich Court toward the entry plaza. We also have a nighttime view of this area. So as you can see, things are quite dark. There's not a lot of sky glow. The only comment that we received is that the street lights on this side of the road near the townhomes probably would be brighter than are shown in this rendering. So you would probably get a lot more light in the foreground strictly because of the street lights. Then building 2B, or sorry, from Stockton Drive and Aldrich Court toward the main building, view 2B. This is in the cul-de-sac looking straight toward the main building. And this is full growth. And this is 1 year of growth. And these two views, I wanted to mention that we had gone back and updated these based on revised topography for this berm. So when we originally had done these many months ago, the berm wasn't as high, and we've gone back in and made that sort of a little bit higher and longer to preserve that edge of the site. This is a view from Stockton Drive and Delano Court toward the entry plaza, view 3A, full tree growth. And then this is 1 year of growth. This is similar to view 2B. We are looking through from the cul-de-sac of Delano toward the pro parking. Full tree growth in this one. And then this is 1 year of growth. So you can see that the way that the cul-de-sac and the berm are situated, you do get quite a buffer along here, which is nice to see. Then we've got view 4 from Stockton Drive and Prescott looking at the north. So we're finally at the end of Prescott, looking all the way north down the road. And you can see the topography of that berm, how it comes up on this side and then drapes off as you go toward the pro parking. We do have some pretty good views that Gerdo will give testimony about later, which are showing the site sections. So you can really see how high these townhomes are compared to the berm and the trees on the site. Here is a view on Prescott, looking east, view 5A, toward the pro parking. And you can see the edge of the main building, the back side of it on the left here. That was full tree growth. This is 1 year of growth. View 5B, looking west from Prescott toward the Pro Field. This is full growth along this edge here. You can see the fields in the background. And then this is the same as 1 year of growth. All right, swinging around to the west, we've got view 6 in the cul-de-sac. Looking toward the west edge of the site, you can see what a grade change there is. And I believe this one was full growth, or I think this one, I will have to check, but this one was a night view, so we didn't have 2 for slide 24. This one's important because you can actually see the field lights in the background, and you can see the street lamp in the foreground. And this is one of the ones I wanted to mention, that the comment was made that this would probably be slightly brighter, not quite as dark in this foreground area. In this rendered view, we've got view 7A. We are looking from Green Knolls Road and Featherly Road, looking south. This view we prepared to show exactly where the outline of the full build out would be. So the red outline that you're seeing is the indoor half field here, the field light here, the women's and girls building here, and then the rest of the field lighting. But what's interesting is in this view, the way that the trees are staggered, even when it's winter, you don't see the form of the building. You can see where it goes back and forth. And then we have a night view of that as well, which it's pretty much pitch black. You just don't see the field lights. We put this in front of Bob, and he said that that was a good representation of what you would see. The next view is view 7B. This is also showing that full build out with the indoor half field and one of the field lights in the background. That would be the position where it would fall. This is what it would look like in just phase 1 without the indoor half field there. So you can see the positions of where the field lights would be. And then these same 2 views, we did night shots of them as well. In phase 1. I think one thing we should mention about those views as well is those are photos that we took this last year and then had the renderers line up the views on top of them. So I think that's an important thing to mention. This was winter this last year. And then we're almost to the last couple of views. We've got view 7C. I think this was a community request that we do this render from Green Knolls Road. You see the outline of where the indoor half field is. I know it seems odd because you're saying, why is this so much lower than the house? But I think what people really need to understand is that the perspective and the elevation change from these different neighborhoods really does create this situation where you don't see it. A lot of the houses and the trees and the foliage are blocking the height of the building. Here is phase 1. The previous was phase 2. Basically, it's at that level. And then we've got both the night views for the full build and the phase 1. All right, and that is the end. Okay. Should we switch? Yeah.
Yeah, let's switch up. You're gonna still run this?
I'll run it for Gerda. Yeah.
Okay, I'll move on. So next we'd like to call Gerdo Aquino. He's the CEO of the SWA Group. He has offices, as I said, in LA and New York. And he'll testify as to the landscape.
All right, let me just swear you in before we get started. Do you swear and affirm that any testimony you're about to give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Why don't you provide some of your credentials for the board?
My name is Gerardo Aquino. I'm the CEO of SWA Group. We're a national landscape architecture planning and urban design firm. I spend probably a third of my time on the East Coast in our New York office. I'm licensed in the state of New Jersey and New York, as well as many other states throughout the US. I'm working specifically on this project because I have an expertise in medium to large scale campus planning and design, institutional, private, public sector. And the work I do also collaborates with other experts within SWA, including our New York office, who have been working on this project with me since the beginning.
So I would ask that he is admitted as an expert.
No objection. Proceed.
Okay, so
Okay, great.
if you won't mind, give him the, details of the landscape.
Sure. First of all, this is a very exciting project for many reasons. As a landscape architect and planner, I believe that landscape can do many things. And for this particular project, what you see on the screen is a lot of green, but it's green that's based on an approach where we're trying to interpret the natural structure of the forests that you find locally and within the region. And that is to say that there's informality, there's density, there's also openness, there's a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees, ground cover, and topography. And so with that approach, we want to integrate those elements specifically into the landscape design for this project. So I'm going to take you through a few slides, just building on what the team has already presented to you all. Let's go to the next slide. Yes. So we're going to take you through a few slides. This slide that you see on the screen is.
Let's mark it as A21 and then just describe how many slides and what they're going to depict.
Recording in progress. We are at 8 slides total.
This slide it's called the green loop. And
Edgardo, would you explain just what the package of slides is meant to represent?
This particular package of slides gives you a broad overview of the approach of tree planting and understory planting surrounding the site perimeter. It also includes cross sections at key areas to understand the topographical relationship between the campus and the surrounding context. And plant species is also given to help differentiate an area that has evergreen and deciduous versus other areas. Okay. This slide is simply talking about that strategy that I was describing earlier. You have a different context on the north, the south, the west, and the east. And so we're very careful and mindful to look carefully at what the function is of landscape in those specific areas, where the main intention here is to largely screen views between the adjacent context and our campus. And by largely meaning that this approach of using different types of tree species, triangular spacing of trees, creating density where we need to create density, increasing the size of trees where we think they will have the most impact, is all integrated into this overall approach. And the cross sections will illustrate how that is utilized. This slide talks about planting typologies, the different species of plants. And I just want to pause here and just say something about the total tree count. So based on the original tree count by our civil engineer, Rich, who's in the audience here. The required tree count is 720 trees per the local ordinance. We have planted a total of 726 trees, 832 if you include some of the specific species of arborvitae. But the big message here is that when you
Can everyone in the audience please mute their cell phones?
yeah. Okay, let's see, where was I? Okay, right. Tree count, yes. Okay, so you could say that we have met the tree count, but in fact, we have exceeded that tree count when you account for the ratios that are outlined in the ordinance. So for example, the base tree for deciduous tree is a 2.5-inch caliper. In many cases, we exceed that. We have some trees that are 3.5-inch caliper, some 4.5-inch caliper, and those ratios increase to 1 to 2, 1 to 3. So the total tree count on paper is 1,292 trees. And we think that's notable and will add to the kind of density and quantity that gives us the flexibility to do what we need to do in terms of creating this kind of screening buffer. The other thing I want to say about this slide and the slides that come after it is the informality of the layout and the varied height and species are all intentional. We want it to look natural, but we know that because of specific views and topographical elements, there is a little bit of design that goes into that. And so we're mindful of how to carefully lay out that approach for trees. And then, the third element of this diagram and the others that follow is the use of topography. So Kristen talked about that earlier, using topography along some of the roadways to bring the tree height up higher from street level. And it's important that that's noted because as we increase the topography along the adjacent street, it'll have those trees up at a higher elevation so that you can have that effective buffer on day one. Okay, so specifically to this slide, what you're seeing here is again the mix of evergreen trees with deciduous trees, the berms that are sort of highlighted with a black line there, which also show up in the renderings that Kristen shared earlier. There's an existing trail that is highlighted on this diagram, but probably more importantly, we are keeping some of the existing trees. There are 2 of them, actually 3 shown on this particular diagram. They are the 3 olive-colored trees there. They're quite large. So wherever we can, we do want to preserve those large existing trees for the kind of heritage and sense of place that they bring to the project. The other images I want to point out on the right-hand side of the screen is the understory. So that bottom right image and the upper right image to some extent try to articulate an approach where that understory is as important as the trees themselves. They create that visual buffer from 8 inches off the ground to sometimes 3 to 4 feet off the ground. And when you start to combine the understory planting with the evergreen trees that have low branching, the deciduous trees that have higher branching, you effectively create a contiguous buffer that is an effective visual and physical barrier. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, a few technical cross sections. So you can see in the key map on the right side of the screen, the cross section is cut from the existing townhomes to the sports fields, looking northeast. And what you're seeing there in the landscape, you're seeing a couple of large existing trees combined with year 1 planting of deciduous and evergreen trees. You're also seeing the understory planting that is also shown there in terms of trying to accurately depict what you would have on year 1. And with tree growth, we reference both the projects that we're doing in the region, especially in this area. And we also look to the American Standard for Nursery Stock, ANSI Z60.1, as a basis for articulating how fast these trees can grow. And to simply put, between the deciduous trees and the evergreen trees that we're specifying, you could expect anywhere from 12 to 36 inches of vertical growth per year, given performing soils, good drainage, good irrigation. Getting that first 2 seasons established will really allow these trees to take off. And also the varied sizes that go in day one. Some trees are the basic 2.5 inch caliper, and then we have some of the larger ones. So having the different sizes going in day one, we're going to get a lot of variation in the heights, which I think will lead to kind of a healthy forest or buffer. All right. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Okay, so this cross section you can see there is in the upper right-hand corner. It crosses between the existing townhomes and the main building. You can see the berm, the way the berm rises in the center of that cross section, the way in which we're trying to plant this layering of evergreens and deciduous trees on the berm and closer to the buildings. You can see the dashed lines that are shown there. So that dashed line that Kristen is pointing at is the horizontal view line from someone standing in a second story looking across. So you're kind of seeing tops of trees, but if you consider the growth rate of these trees and the layering approach of the triangular spacing and plan view, we think it's going to have an effective buffering goal after a few years. Yes, this is year one growth that you see here. And then of course that some of those large trees are existing. Okay. This is another technical cross section, so you could see the key map in the right top corner of the screen. Same Stockton Drive, same townhomes. And this one cuts all the way to the main building. It's a deeper section, it's wider, but it shows the various components of that particular section, which from the main building going from left to right, you have the parking lot, you have the planting buffer, you have Stockton Drive, and then you have the residential community, all of which is going to work together to create this buffer of trees and forest. And again, what I pointed out earlier, it's important to us to have the high point of the berm closer to the street, which gets the trees to a higher elevation, closer to the roadway and closer to the residential community. This is the west side of the campus. You can see the existing neighborhood to the west there. This is the area that has the steep embankment. On this embankment, again, the same approach as the east side. Deciduous and evergreen forest, triangular spacing, varied heights, caliper sizes, understory planting, all for continuity. It's important that that everyone feels the landscape is sort of wrapping the project and also moving into the project. It feels like it's a part of the landscape that is found in this area. This is a cross section again on the west side. So you can see the grade change between the residential community to on the left side of the section and our campus on the right side. And it's pretty dramatic. The planting is going to do a lot to create that landscape of continuity and buffer. There are some existing trees in that area that will only enhance the overall approach. And then you can see some of the labels there that talk about new evergreen trees. So, part of the strategy always is to use the evergreen trees very strategically. Some of them are small, some of them are large, but we want to place them in areas where they could have that highly effective year one impact. This is a technical cross section again on the west side of the campus. It shows the relationship between the residential community and the agility areas, right? It also shows a little bit of the buffering that happens on both sides of the roadway. And so having the evergreen and conifer trees on the east side of the roadway, again, will create that layered visual buffer. Okay, this is another exhibit. I believe there are, let's see how many. There are 6 slides in this exhibit. This exhibit is going to explain the campus-wide approach to planting, specifically trees, so that you could see how those technical sections work as a whole throughout the campus. This particular slide, again, it's color-coded. It shows in as much detail as a diagram can show the different species and their specific location. And I would say that the takeaway here is that those darker green circles you see there are the evergreens, and they are almost always associated with the relationship to the residential uses surrounding the campus. So we try to prioritize the evergreen trees in those areas. Those evergreen trees in those specific areas are also larger than in other areas where we use evergreen trees. The deciduous trees are also a little bit larger on the east side of the campus and the west side of the campus, again, to recognize the approach of creating that buffer between the campus and the surrounding community. This slide is starting to move into the campus a bit. You can see the red dots on the top there are a certain species of tree. And then different trees are used throughout the campus in formal ways to accentuate a pathway or to highlight a connection between one area of campus to another. Next slide. This slide shows a little bit of the, oh, that's fine. Shows a little bit of the hierarchy of where we're trying to prioritize different size species. And you can see in the pink outline, those are the areas where we're putting the most resources and the most attention in terms of size, height, caliper, density. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, the understory is equally important as the tree canopy. It creates that buffer that happens from ground level up to 3 or 4 feet. It's a varied plant palette. It's comprised of different types of plants that you would find in this area. We are looking at an approach that feels kind of organic and informal, but also might recognize specific areas like intersections or special areas within the campus. That palette extends obviously to the edges of our campus. So it was important for us to look at the slopes and the embankments and the berms with a plant palette that is perhaps a little softer, maybe even mixed species that are both seasonal and evergreen. We didn't want to use all seasonal grasses there that would die off in the winter. So having a mix of evergreen plants in those areas will always give it a sense of green. Next slide. And then the interior promenades and walkways, a lot of these plants are kind of ground covers, evergreen, some flowering. Some grasses kind of make their way into the campus just for kind of continuity and a sense of cohesion to the overall campus landscape identity. I believe that was my last slide, and that completes my testimony.
Okay.
Get back to you.
So, Mr. Restiopio, you prepared to go on to
Yeah. we
board
have
questions?
other Questions, right.
Okay, all right, thank you. So we'll do that. First, we'll open up questions to board members on both sets of testimony. I can't see it, George. George, your hand is up. Mr. Quillen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I wanted to thank both witnesses for their very thorough and well-organized testimony. And I had some questions. First of all, and this is something which maybe I should remember from prior meetings, but Field 9, this is a question, I guess, for Ms. Bird. Field 9 has a parking lot next to it. Has that been on other plans that we've seen?
Yes, it has been.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know if you could hear me. Yes, it has been.
I did hear you. Thank you. Other board members can remind me that I've seen it before. The wood facade, the wood trim that's on the main building, I wanted to ask you what material that is. You described it as wood. Is it what is the actual material?
Yes. So we are looking at a series of options and actually leaning toward a wood look aluminum fin, more like a louver, so that it will be maintenance free for the most part, but still give that look of wood, and it will have a grain to it as if it was wood. So I think we haven't settled on that 100%, but that is the direction we're going currently.
Would have a kind of a, I'm not sure what shade to call that. I mean, I assume it wouldn't look quite as pink as it does in these photos. It would look more like a natural wood color.
Right. The monitor may be shifting it a bit, but the intent is that it is light in color, more like a maple.
Okay, thank you. The logo that you suggested would be on the roof of the indoor half field. That roof is a flat roof, is that correct?
It's slightly sloped for drainage. So it will have the minimum recommended slopes for a typical sort of built up type roof. And then as you can see, the logo would be in the center, and it's showing the area where solar panels could be, but that's not a definite at this point.
Okay, I understand that. So no one will see this logo unless they're in an airplane, is that true?
Correct.
Okay. And there's already been testimony that this is not, this property is not on the flight path of the airport, although I do believe it's pretty close to the flight path.
Correct. My understanding is that it is near, but not in the flight path.
One last question I think I had for you is in photo 2B, I think it is, the view that shows from Aldrich Court toward the main building.
Let me find it 1 second. Yes.
So in the next one with the 1 year growth.
Okay.
So there, the main building doesn't seem to be visible at all. I guess it is. Okay, it is. Okay, that's the wood fins showing the strength of the wood fins. It looks a little bit like trees back there.
It does. That was kind of purposeful, and we're working with the landscape plan, as Gerdo mentioned, to triangulate the trees to make sure there is coverage.
Okay, thank you. And then I had one question for Mr. Aquino, and that is the views that you showed were very interesting. I don't think you showed anything from Featherly or Green Knolls, and I wondered why that is. That would be from, I guess, what you would call the north side of the property.
That area has an existing forest that's quite dense and varied. It's your typical mixed hardwood forest, very mature. And so we felt that maybe the other areas needed more priority.
There'll be minimal disturbance or no disturbance on the far side of the access road there in that forest. Is that true?
For that area, we are proposing some trees to help infill some of the gaps that may occur there to make it a more contiguous buffer, mainly evergreen trees.
Those are the ones that I see right along the road there, where your hand
Correct.
is. Yeah, okay.
Correct.
All right. I suspect you may get some questions from the neighbors about whether they would like to see some views from that perspective. And then one final thing for both of you and for Mr. Rassiopi is whether this presentation material has been given to the township to put up on their website, or if it can be given in PDF form to put up on the website right away.
We will give it, yeah, for sure. I think that as Ms. Bird spoke, many of the perspectives are there already on the website. This includes a few more that were requested, I think, by the public, as well as some updated perspectives of what you already have on the site, to account for like things like the higher berm, continuation of the berm, things like that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carlin. Any other board members? Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a couple of questions as well. For Mr. Aquino, I have a question about the understory. Does it, I didn't hear you talk about like annuals, perennials. Does the understory change the appearance throughout the year as the plants change? Or are you anticipating planting annuals in some of those locations?
We're still in the early stages of refining that plant palette. At this point, it's really the approach of utilizing a family of understory planting that would have a good green look throughout the year. So we understand, in the winter time, you have certain conditions, but and some of those plants will need to die off. The evergreens hopefully will kind of still kind of balance out the aesthetic and the buffering that we're looking for in the functionality of the plants.
In some of your pictures, they included flowers. So some of the understory will be flowering and maybe others grasses. You're still planting this?
Yes, we hope so. That's the intention, that the understory planting will have as the slide on the screen shows, a lot of seasonal color. Yes.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. I think this would be a question for Ms. Bird. You referenced the IDA criteria. I know we talked about it at the last meeting. They have criteria for the sports lighting, community-friendly standards for sports lighting. Does the IDA also have criteria for like parking lot lighting? And I didn't look into those criteria myself yet.
Mr. Keller, the traffic engineer, will be speaking about.
Oh,
the
that's
parking
right.
lights.
Okay, he's going to talk about that. Okay. And You mentioned, you touched on solar panels. Can you elaborate on what you said about that?
So we are looking at several locations for solar panels, and let me pull up that rendering so we can reference it. So currently, we are showing the option for solar panels on the indoor half field, on the roof of the field house, a small section on the main building, and then a small section on the academy dorms. But currently, that is still up to Red Bull if that's something they want to proceed with.
So they're still in a decision-making process about that.
Correct, yes.
And can we express a view that we're favorable, or at least I'm
Absolutely.
favorable to that?
Absolutely, yes.
I don't know how that works as far as next steps, but I'll just put that out there. At some point in one of the reports somewhere, I read that you have an intention for the facility to be LEED certified.
Correct, yes.
Can you comment on that a little bit, how that connects with the various things you've presented to us tonight?
Yes, it connects in several ways. I mean, obviously, the solar panels are one of the many ways where we could get more LEED points. I think in terms of the sustainable materials and recycled materials within the building itself, a lot of that will be interiors focused, but we are currently honing in on the level of LEED certification, and we've had our recent eco charrette, so we're trying to figure out what level of certification we can attain. We are also, from a sustainability standpoint, looking at Fitwell certification, which is for the building occupants. So we are exploring both of those certifications. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Also, I think I'm skipping back now to Mr. Aquino. I assume that you were one of the people that reviewed our do not plant list in selecting the species that you selected.
Yes.
I just want to say that we appreciate that too. I know you guys got that before we had passed it as a governing body, and I appreciate the sort of proactive treatment of that list on your part. So thank you. And I think, oh, I know, I had one other question. You talked about the height of the main building being 49 feet and 5 inches.
Yes. So
But it is 3 stories, right?
Correct. So we are at 49 feet 5 inches to the top of the roof. And then we've got a 3-foot parapet that runs around, which is outside of the zoning sort of restrictions. You can have that 3-foot parapet. So we were very conscious in trying to make sure that didn't just meet the maximum. We've tried to pull it down a little bit so that it wasn't right at 50. So that is why you see the 49'5".
50 is the maximum for 3 stories?
I think that was what we were held to. Yeah.
That's correct.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
For this project, yes.
Okay.
I don't think it was the same for the previous project. I think they had higher buildings.
Okay. That's all I've got for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Mr. Flowers?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Byrd, could we go back to the slide? I think we were showing it to Mr. Quillen, showing I think it might be that one there. If we can look down a little bit, building A. On other drawings, I think we saw a generator, and was it called a chiller or something like that? What were we calling that other thing? Yeah, okay, that's where they are. I didn't see them before.
Right.
But, okay, so
Yes,
they are
that
on the
was
rendering.
a chiller and a generator in that area.
Thank you. I just didn't see it before.
Yeah.
All right. Second question for the renderings of the views from the neighborhood. It seemed that there's a missing view, one from Aldrich looking directly at Field 9. Did I miss that? Can you comment on that? Would that be a difficult view to produce? It's kind of 1A is close, right? But it's like Field 9's off to the side. We're not really looking at it. We're looking down the street. And I think the more concerning view, potentially, at least from my point of view here, is like the people along Aldrich looking really out their windows, out their back windows.
Right.
This is just kind of off to the side. So
Correct.
would that view be difficult to produce?
I think potentially the reason we didn't is because we had that extensive section, let's see, through that area with the existing trees and the newly planted trees. And so I think we were showing this in lieu of the view. But I think that would be up to, I think Red Bull to decide if they wanted us to pursue that render.
Yeah, I assume we'll hear more about this in the public session. Yeah, okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board members? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you both for your testimony tonight. Wanted to follow back up on the solar panels. If solar panels aren't pursued, would having green roofs or living roofs be something that would be in consideration for the rooftops there to limit the, I guess, especially talking about LEED certification and trying to reduce the overall heating of the buildings or retain some of the heating in the winter? Would that be something that would be an option for?
No, I don't think that was something that was currently considered, but I would point to this Academy Bar building right here in the center. A lot of this is vegetative.
Mm-hmm.
So that was our green roof portion of the project. But in terms of the other buildings, I don't think we have the floor to floor height to depress the slab enough to really do that on top of this main building.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Regarding the signs, you showed a number of renderings of potential signs on the property. Did you have a rendering of the signs for Columbia Road for the main entrance and the service road entrance?
Yeah, I don't have that in. I think that's something that they're currently developing a full rendering. These are elevations of those views. So that is something that I know our graphics team is working on currently.
Okay. Moving on to the landscaping, obviously with over 1,200 trees, that's a big endeavor. I can imagine that there is an expectation that a certain percentage will not survive after a few years. Can you talk about that? And will there be replacements? Will you be replacing every tree that does not survive, or will only be a fraction of trees that don't survive will be replaced?
Well, the standard practice with tree installation is that the trees that are installed are guaranteed for a certain period of time by the installer. Sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's 3 years. It all depends on what agreement is made with that installer. And during that time, if trees fail, if they die, or if irrigation is damaged, all of that is repaired as part of that contract.
Okay.
Our specifications are very detailed in terms of soil amendment, drainage, all the kind of protections you would want in making sure that tree had the best start it could get.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Mr. in order?
Question. Yeah, thanks. Thank you both for your testimony. And two quick questions. One from Ms. Bird. If you would show again, I'd just like to take another look. I think it's view 5A, but first I just want to get a better sense of, because I lost track from when you went to 5A, where we were actually looking from for 5A.
Right. So that is along Prescott Road, standing right between fields 1 and 2 across the street, looking easterly.
And the golf course would be.
That
yes,
I
the
wanted
golf
to,
course.
right, and I was wondering, are there residential, I don't see any residential homes there.
No, there
Okay,
aren't.
if we could just have a quick look at that
Sure.
again, just because that was the only one that was sort of like, oh, that's different than the others.
Here we go.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's the full growth.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
And just to make sure I'm understanding a new terminology, which I'm excited to have, called sitting on the level 2 slab. So what I'm when you showed the rendering under building rendering, the third tab or second tab, there it is. I'm seeing this as kind of sunk in right on the roof. Is that what that means?
Oh, right,
This is
sitting on
your,
the
you're talking
level.
about your equipment kind of sunk in to a
Correct.
second floor, although still sitting on the roof.
Correct. We're
And-
trying to maintain them within that same footprint so that they will not rise above that third floor roof.
Okay, and that's the same on the phase 3 pro women's side.
Yes,
Yeah,
that
I
one,
think I
that
saw a
one's
little
shorter.
sunken in area too.
Yeah, see these sunken in areas? Yeah.
Oh, wait, over here on the right, or is that one?
So there's
Yeah.
some mechanical units here.
Okay.
And then I believe there is, I think there might be one in this region somewhere.
Thank you. That was helpful. As I was listening to it, I was trying to figure out what that was, but then when I saw that slide again, I could really see it. Mr. Kino, I just had one quick question about, and you know, I'm not sure if you'll be able to help me with this. I'm wondering, is there any planning or any thought, or is it even material at all to the effect of landscaping as a sound buffer as well as visual buffer? Has that been part of the plan, or does it just happen coincidentally, or is it not relevant?
That's a very relevant topic in terms of can the landscape buffer sound? And I would say it's really the landform, the topography that can create a sound buffer. Trees themselves can do some, but not anything significant. It's really the landforms which we have incorporated in the key areas of the plan.
So we're talking about the berm.
The berms,
primarily.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of quick questions concerning the landscape. One, you had mentioned irrigation. Is there be a irrigation system installed? I mean, there's a lot of plantings to hand water. So will there be a system installed to at least get these things through the first few years?
And absolutely, yes.
Okay. And the second is the plantings along the service drive on the north side, which you said you've added. You're not, as I recall, there isn't much there now. So you're not taking anything away on site. You're adding additional plantings along the road inside the existing forest line, basically.
Yes, that's
Kind of
correct.
between the road and the trail, I think that's there now, right?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I had one other question on the signage. I think you mentioned I wrote down A1 and A2. That's the primary entrance sign, both
Yes.
internally illuminated.
Correct.
Did you say what the size of those was?
I believe it's on here, I thought. Yes, so we've got A1, which is 5 feet in height by 18 feet long. And the smaller secondary entrance sign is 4 feet high by 12 feet long. So in terms of the orientation, if I can move over there. So that would be positioned, A1 would be positioned here, and then A2 positioned after you sort of turn the corner. In this
Are those at at Stockton and the service road, right?
correct? Yes. Yeah, so this is the service road.
Yeah, okay. I missed the sizes. Thank you.
Any other board members? Referring to that sign, those are within the development plan? Were they specified in the development plan?
I can answer that. I think it was left to the board's discretion, Paul. I think that's how we dealt with the signs,
Yeah.
signage.
So, Mr. Chairman, we knew that there was going to be signage, a significant amount of signage proposed, meaning not only identification, but wayfinding and directional signage, and also even some signage with regard to some of the fencing, such as windscreen signs. So what we did, because we didn't have all the details at the time we were sort of drafting, negotiating the ordinance, we put in a requirement that a comprehensive sign package be submitted basically as part of the application, and it would be up to the discretion of the planning board once it hears from the applicant, the board professionals, and the public as to whether or not that sign package is appropriate. That's the way we handle that. There were no discrete standards per se.
Mm.
Okay, thank you. And does that sign 21 feet, is it 21 feet long? Is that
18.
18? Okay, I'm sorry. Is that sort of a standard length sign for your facility? Is that a normal
Well, yeah,
amount?
I think it's pretty normal for a training facility of this size. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. What I'd like to say is I really appreciate the modern contemporary architecture that you brought to this project. I'd like to see more of that in Morris Township. While we don't have a lot of architectural details and renderings in here, I can really tell that it's something that will really modernize the area. And I think that it's nice, from my personal perspective, to see modern architectural appointments in the township. I hope we can continue to do that. And I also appreciate the effort in the, you don't call it the undergrowth, under the tree level,
Understory.
the understory. I mean, that's a lot of work. That can really make or break an area and how it looks. It's not just, trees over dying grass. So I can really see, and I love to go out I was just in Provincetown and looking at the beautiful, beautiful areas under the areas. And that sort of appointment to the landscaping can make a really big difference in the look of and feel of this facility. And so I just want to say I really appreciate that effort because we don't see a lot of that. And, between the architecture and that, we could sort of upgrade our potential, looking forward to the future for what applicants are doing. On the sign, the D1 signs, those are 6 foot tall. And I kind of have the same question because there's a lot of them and it seems to be, I can't tell whether that's, it seems like it's going to be a big sign, but looking at the area, maybe it won't appear that large.
Right. I think the key is that the vehicular signs have to be able to have letters of legibility of a certain height as somebody is approaching in a car. So
Right.
it automatically, you need to get them above sort of the shrub level and also have enough space to put the directionality of where they're going.
Those are all monument signs, right? So the lettering will be toward the top and the bottom might be blank.
Correct.
Okay.
So these are examples. Let me find a good vehicular example for you. So D1.1 shows the directionality for that 6 foot high sign. And so, yes, the bottom half would be blank and it would be the materiality, whether that is metal or a mesh. And then the upper half of the sign indicates as you're driving which direction to go. And then the very top is the branded element.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
After you.
Mayor?
I had a clarifying question about sorry to keep talking about the signs, for Columbia Road. When you have final renderings, will that be shared with our professionals for review before they're produced, or how is that going to work?
Yeah, we could work with the professionals as the final sign off for sure.
Okay. Is that, Jim and Paul, is that standard? Well,
If you make it standard, Mayor, it'll, the
Go
approval
for it.
will be subject to our review and approval. And
Okay.
if I could just jump in, I know I have a couple of questions of my own, but I mean, I will say that the area and height of some of the directionals appear somewhat on the tall and large area sign. I mean, I just saw the example they put up, and I'm certainly not offended by it, but I will say that, 6 feet is probably on the high side for a directional, and there are a lot of them. So, this is something why we, made the subject to the board's review and approval. And the one other thing I will say at this point is that I'm happy to hear that the directionals and the wayfinding are not going to be internally illuminated. I do have a little bit of an issue with the freestanding entrance signs being 5 by 18 with an internal illumination. I just prefer, I'm not a big fan of internal illumination myself, and I know I've expressed that opinion to the board in the past, and I just throw that out to the board and the applicant for consideration, particularly in light of the size of that one entrance sign being 90 square feet. And in the TCC report, we basically, let it be known that there was a lot of signage and that when the applicant came here to testify, they'd have to document the need for all the signage in terms of number, area, and height. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I tend to think that the 6 feet is tall because there are a lot of them, and that's why I asked. And I'm trying to get a gauge on 18 feet. I think the 5 foot is probably standard. So I don't know whether the board wants to talk about that right now. If there are any other questions?
Well, did we just make the consult with our professionals a condition of approval? Is that what just?
Or should it
What-
be coming back to the board? I mean, that's the question, right?
And I think that was just related to, and it's not standard, the board typically sees the sign as it's going to be installed. But in this particular case, I think there's a sponsor's name that's going to go on there. And I would probably ask the applicant to provide, a sample of what that would look like with the sponsor's name on it. I think that gives the board, some guidance and also helps Paul and I if we're reviewing the sign, afterwards.
And if there's any coloring on the sign. I mean, right now it's black, white, and gray in the, in the exhibit. And again, you got 90 square feet internally illuminated with colors. So
It would be good to see a better picture of what it actually would look like.
Absolutely. And we are in development on that. What I can tell you is that the internal illumination has to do with the fact that we don't want to externally illuminate it and then have the possibility of there being light spillage all over the place. The other portion that I can attest to is that it's doubtful it would be the full 90 square feet. We're really looking to highlight the lettering portion of it. So it will be a much smaller illuminated area than 5 by 18.
Mr. Chairman, quick question. Does anyone know what sign is, what the size of the sign that's been there for years? How big that sign is now at the entrance?
It's not 18 feet.
Honeywell and whatever it became.
It's definitely much taller than 5 feet, but it's not 18 feet long. But I don't think 18 feet long is excessive for that front lawn area, and the kind of speeds that you see on Columbia Road.
It is a big area, so I can see what you're saying.
And just Ms. Bird, you're saying that the internal illumination is more easily compliant with the dark sky?
Correct. Yeah, because you aren't taking a floodlight and yeah.
Thank you.
And one thing I would add is that I've seen internally lit signs that look nice, and I've seen some that are like a big glowing box. It's not very nice. So it can be done tastefully.
And how do we sort of regulate the difference? At what point do we say, well, your proposed illumination, is it adjustable once it's in there? Once the sign is up, can you tone down the amount of internal illumination?
I think we would try to tune that in before so that nobody would have to operationally tune it up and down. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion? We're not going to finish tonight, obviously, and perhaps for the next hearing, that the applicant can prepare an exhibit that basically shows the extent and maybe even an example of what it would look like when illuminated externally, which is what they're looking for.
I think that would be very helpful.
Internally. And then I think the board and the public will be in a better position to kind of make a value judgment.
And I would just add,
That would be good.
It's not uncommon for the board to leave certain details of signage to the professional satisfaction.
Right.
But I do agree that if the ultimate plan vests that discretion in the planning board for the size of some of the signage, that the planning board does, I would say, a more in-depth review at the next meeting, maybe perhaps after they see that exhibit. Because I think it should be clear in the resolution what the board is willing to permit in terms of signage. Because right now, we don't have really any kind of visual rendering for what it's.
No.
Right, I think that
And
that's-
let me just add, to an issue such as whether it's internally or externally illuminated, to me, is a board decision. It's not a detail that can be worked out by Jim and myself.
Right. And the D1 signs, they're not lit at all. There's no external illumination.
Correct,
It's all
yes.
just, okay, thank you. Any other board members have questions?
Yeah, I
Um,
would, if we're going to ask for some renditions of what the A1 and A2 signs look like, could we have like a rendering of what the the D1 signs might look sitting on the side of a road?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so board professionals, Jim, do you have any questions?
Just, Ms. Bird, I'm wondering if we can go back to 7B, and I think that was a view from the Green Knolls neighborhood, and it showed the outline of the indoor building. And I do believe there were some lights, some of the light stanchions that were shown in the background, but and I do realize that the competition field has lights, but it doesn't seem like they're in that rendering. It's much further away. We're talking hundreds of feet, so maybe they do get lost in there. But I was just curious as to where that lighting would be, because I thought it would be to the left of the that projected roof line of the half-field building.
At this angle, because we're turned slightly looking eastward, the indoor field is blocking those lights.
Okay. Are you able to just go back to the the rendering location plan,
Yes.
that kind of shows where we're looking?
The next one, isn't there one without the half field or no?
Do you? Yes.
7C. Look at 7C. Jim, is that what you were looking at for?
Right. These are the lights for the competition pitch. And so when you put the building in the way, they go away. I can go to the
Oh,
plan.
okay. All right. I see what you did there. I
Yeah.
pull in building. Okay. Now I understand how you.
It's a little deceiving because of
That
the
was rendered.
angle. Yeah. So if we go to the plan. Yeah.
Yep.
So basically you're looking in this direction and the building is blocking it because you're getting that full corner cut off.
Yep. Got it. Thank
Yeah.
you. And on the directional signs, I was of the opinion too that they're on the tall side, and I also thought the font might be on the small side for vehicles traveling. But I think a rendering, as Mr. Bai had suggested, would be helpful. Paul touched on the French or the fence screening signage. Is there anything that is proposed along those lines? Because obviously there's a significant amount of fencing that's proposed, around the fields and the facility, and would just like to know what would be planned, because that can obviously add a significant amount of signage essentially to the site. What's the proposal on that end of things?
Right. So most of the fencing scrim is not branded. So anything that would be potentially branded would be on a piece of scrim on the inside of the fencing facing the fields. So it would not be focused externally.
Okay, thanks. I had no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Phillips?
Just to follow up on that, would there be any way, since it's specifically acknowledged and provided for in the ordinance that the windscreen signs on the fences is permitted, is there any way to even get some kind of placeholder to indicate where or the extent of that, as opposed to just you'd have the ability to do it completely on the interior of all the fields? Is there any way to get a better handle on that?
We will.
We can.
I think
Yeah.
that would be helpful for the board to have that information.
We can do that.
Great. The New York Red Bulls training, the freestanding sign with the letters,
Oh, yes.
could you go to that?
Mhm.
And just the height of those letters and how is that sign illuminated?
So currently, this sign is 6 feet tall. Originally, we had looked at externally illuminating this, but as we're learning from working with our lighting consultant, due to trying to preserve as much dark sky as possible, we are looking at internally illuminating this. So while those details haven't been figured out yet, whether it's part or all of it, that's something we need to dive into.
Okay. And I know you, in one of your exhibits, you did show a nighttime.
Mhm.
And perhaps if somehow or another you could provide some more level of detail in terms of how that would appear illuminated
This one.
at night. Yeah, because it's kind of
Right.
partially viewed.
Right.
So those letters are all this internal illumination.
Currently,
Uplit,
this
backlit, it's all internal.
currently this rendering has not been updated, so I believe this was an external illumination. But recently, we learned in a coordination meeting that we want to likely internally illuminate.
If you can provide, more detailed
Mhm.
information at the next
Yep.
meeting as that evolves at your end. I think that would be helpful for
Absolutely.
for the board. And then you talked about rooftop mechanicals on building A. Any of the, I may have missed this, I apologize.
Mhm.
Any of the other buildings have rooftop mechanicals or was it just A?
I believe A and D and E.
Okay.
D and E. B is down in this well, sitting on the ground.
Okay. And I just want to make sure, I'm just looking at the renderings there, the township ordinance has a limit on the coverage
Mhm.
of 20% of the roof. It doesn't appear just eyeballing it that you're anywhere near the 20%. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay,
yeah.
and there's a 15-foot limit on the height, which was really put in play to accommodate an elevator overrun, which is really the one thing that trips you up to 15 feet. I assume you're within those standards?
We are.
Okay. And then the last thing on architectural, I noticed there were no floor plans that were showed for building A, and you did say it was 3 stories. Is there a basement?
Oh, correct. There is a basement, so there's one subgrade.
Okay, and just to be sure, and this was in the TCC report, that based on the ordinance definitions of basement stories and height, that you are 3 stories for that building? I'm assuming you are, and that there's no way, given the exposure of the basement, that you trip that to a story. Just make sure that that's the case, that technically you're 3 stories.
Okay.
Because you are within the 50-foot height limit.
Correct.
Clearly. And then the last thing, it was brought up at the first meeting that there is a potential alternative use of the 3rd floor of Building A.
Correct.
And again, you didn't show the floor plans this evening, but I think originally it was to be corporate office space. And then there's the potential to do, I guess you refer to it as regenerative space for pro players.
Correct.
Is that still the intent to go with the alternative, or is one selected? Or where are you in that process?
I don't think it's been decided yet.
Okay, so you're still coming in looking for either alternative.
Correct.
Okay, and that's probably, Nick, going to affect the parking requirement, which you'll get to in another meeting. And then just a couple quick questions on the landscaping. Could you just indicate the height or the range and heights of the plantings for the deciduous and the evergreen, the range at planting?
Okay. The answer to that would be anywhere from 10 feet all the way up to 25 feet. And again, that's all dependent on species and size on year 1.
Okay. And distinction between deciduous and evergreen on height?
They also vary. For example, some of our larger deciduous trees would be 25 feet plus.
That's right. Okay. And how high is the berm? I was trying to do the math as you had it up there. At its highest point?
Do you know what
6 feet, was it? You did have you had a cross section. There's a cross section, I just, yeah.
Yeah, we can look at,
Six feet.
6 feet,
Okay, good.
6 feet in that specific area.
Right. And there are plantings on either side, correct?
Correct.
And then just the last question is, you had mentioned that the exhibits were based on 1 year growth. And then I think you said full maturation, and then you had indicated roughly 1 to 3 feet per year is typical. So what would the full maturation be in terms of the heights of those plantings? To go from the original 10 to 25, what would it be at full maturation, and how many years out is that? Does that exhibit reflect?
Well, again, it depends on species and the size that they go in on day one. Okay, so the sections show year one growth. Those mature renderings you saw are only in the renderings, and those depict growth that could be 30, 40 feet at some point in the future if everything performs as they should.
So does that, the number of years dependent on that 1 to 3 feet per year growth essentially? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's a part of it, yes.
Okay. All right. I think it would just be helpful for the public to understand how many years out, just the range.
Sure.
Or some idea how many years out, they would be looking at your exhibit that shows basically what you refer to as the full maturation. Is it 10 years, 20 years, whatever? I just think that would be helpful.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
I just have one item, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
We heard in testimony from the architect that they had a conversation with their lighting expert and that he, I guess, confirmed that the visual renderings were accurate. Because that kind of took place out of context, I think at a minimum, I would ask for the applicant to produce a letter from their expert reflecting that. Because as it exists now, that's basically just hearsay for the board.
We can get that. Sure.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, one other follow-up question for Ms. Bird. There was a reference to the maintenance facility, and I think it was a shed roof that kind of runs off in a northerly direction. And I think on the outer edge of that, there's another generator and chiller. But I was just curious as to how that fits in with the 175-foot setback requirement from the property line. And I think that the chiller and dumpster were kind of outside of that shed roof area, but I just wasn't sure if that, fell into that 175-foot side yard setback requirement, right, or property line setback requirement. And that may be something more for Rich Barrington.
Right, and I believe it was addressed in part of the testimony that we were asked to look at if we could get it within that 175-foot boundary, in which we do believe that we can find provisions to do that.
Okay. So then there would be no variance required at that location? Is that where we're at?
Yes. Correct.
Mr. Keller is going to talk about the variances in totality as part of his testimony.
Yeah, but I think what Jim's asking, is this one of the areas where we need a deviation, a variance?
Potentially, yes.
So the planner will speak about all the variances, and so if we need one there, he'll ask for it.
All right, thanks.
We're going to point them out.
But whether we need one or not, you'll show that on the drawing so we can
Yes.
ascertain.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fisher?
No questions.
No questions? Okay. Any board member follow-up?
A quick question
Brian?
before the public, and related to last week. We were hoping to get the list of some of the places that might have this kind of lighting that we could go look at. Has that been, was that?
No, we'll get it to you. I know Mr. Zeller was.
Okay.
We have to follow up.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at this point in time, we'll entertain questions from the public for these two witnesses on the landscape architect and on the architecture. Please state your name and address and spell your last name, please.
Thank you. Patricia Collins, 4 Green Knolls Road. That's Collins. And I'd like just some clarification, please, regarding the indoor hair field. What are the, and the logo on the roof? What are the dimensions of the logo?
Let's see if that's on the signage. One second. We are looking at 84 feet, 8 inches by 68 feet.
Oh, okay. And Mr. Quillen asked a question, and the answer was something like only planes can see it. And I need some clarification. I don't understand. Is the sign perpendicular to the roof so other people can see it, or if it's flat like on a table?
It's flat. Yeah, the intent is to only be seen from the air.
From the air. And oh, that's interesting, because I'm just wondering, what's the purpose of that? Just a plane, people on a plane can see it? No, and I'm
Yes.
not being facetious. I'm
Yes.
just curious. Because
Yes, it's common in a lot of facilities,
that
even
right?
venues, yeah, that you do something on the roof as a branding moment.
Oh, it's a branding issue. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and another question regarding the slide 7C, which is Green Knolls Road. And the indoor half field behind that, does that have windows? I'll wait till you get there. 7C.
1 second. 7B. C. Okay, so
Right, and behind that is the indoor half field.
correct.
Does that field have windows?
Currently, it is a translucent panel, so you can't see through it. It's just like a translucent material.
It's translucent.
Yeah.
But when they're
So no
practicing
windows.
in the evening, though, will it be lit up and will it reflect any light to the outside people?
Currently, it's just diffuse light, so it's not like you wouldn't see into the facility.
You wouldn't see in, but if someone's looking out their window on Green Knolls Road and and someone's playing at night, can they see that it's lit up inside? In other words, will it be reflecting some light?
I don't think it'll be reflecting any light.
Not reflecting, but can they see lights? Like they'd be seeing another house? Or
I think it's on the other side of the tree line potentially.
But in the wintertime, there are no leaves on the tree, and that's what I'm getting
Right,
at.
but I believe landscape is planting a row of evergreens in order to prevent that.
Okay, well then, moving that a step forward, you said that that's 65 feet high, is that correct?
Correct.
Right, but the house right there is nowhere near that, and you were saying something that was the elevation. So I'm just curious, wouldn't that indoor field be much higher than the house?
No, I know it's deceiving.
Yes, if you would explain
yeah.
that, please.
Yes, so basically when you create a perspective rendering,
Yeah.
things in the background recede and they appear lower because they're further away. So the reason it doesn't pop up to the top here is because it's so far away from the house that your cone of vision is drawn and it's a forced perspective down.
So people in that home, if they're in their upstairs bedroom at night, they're not going to be looking at the house. The house is the field is going to be lower. The indoor field.
Yes, it's because it's so far away. You're basically, it's hard to explain, but that's what's happening. It's like your field of vision is converging, and the things that are far in the background look much lower because they're so far away.
Okay, so they'll be actually in their bedrooms. They'll be looking at openness and not.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just have one or two other questions. Okay. Oh, just about next week. Now, someone else can answer that. The lighting questions, because they only addressed 12 field lights last week, and there's 160 other lights that have to be accounted for. Will that be addressed at our next meeting?
What are the 160 other lights?
Well,
Okay.
at one point it was written that there were 172 lights, and only 12 were addressed last week.
That'll be answered by the next witness.
That will be next week. Good. Okay, and my last question too, who will address the noise issue and the time and hours of operation? I mean, which expert?
I believe John Amorosi addressed that in his last testimony in terms of the hours of operation.
Will that be the last testimony where we can It'll be like when they're going to be closing and the noise,
I believe that was presented already.
but I don't think anything got resolved. Like, for instance, we want to know, like, we don't want it to go on until 10 o'clock at night in our neighborhood. So can that be addressed again at another time?
Can the board speak to that?
And when construction is going on also, I know there are ordinances and we just need to address that, please.
This line of questioning is sort of outside the scope of the testimony that these two witnesses
Okay.
gave. I can confirm that Mr. Amoroso, I believe it was at the second hearing, extensively addressed the schedule and the hours of operation for the
Right.
facility.
But as far as in construction, I'm just
Construction
curious.
will have to follow the township's noise limit requirements.
Okay, and can we get an idea of exactly what that is? And I'm talking about like construction. For some of us who might have missed something, can we just address that at another time at the end? When, the noise, construction, like we don't want it starting
I
at
have to
7.
look at that ordinance. I will get you the specifics, or you can look at that ordinance online and it's spelled out.
I'd rather not look at it online. If
I
you would
know,
be
so I
kind
will get
enough
that
to-
for you and have that
Yeah.
for you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
The
I'd like it in
specifics.
interpretation. Thank you very much.
I think I'll give it to you in writing.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, Alfred DeMiro, 2 Aldrich Court. Thank you, both of you. You've answered most of my questions coming in, so I'm going to bounce around a little because I'm not organized right now. Ms. Bird, could you show us on some picture what a parapet is?
Oh, absolutely. But I have to, I can do it on the rendering, but I could do an exterior elevation, but that would be a new exhibit. I don't think I'm allowed to do that right now.
I'm not sure. While you're looking for that, is the parapet of 3 feet over and above the 49.5 feet?
Correct, and that's allowed by zoning.
Okay, but that's why I was wondering if we could get a look at what it looks like.
So this is, can you see the white or sort of above the fins?
Yes.
That's the parapet. So it's basically where the roof butts up to a small, short wall so that rain and things stay on the roof and drain as opposed to spilling over the side. So that's the piece that's 3 feet above the roof line.
Okay, now, just a picture, can you zoom out a little bit with that picture?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, let's leave it like that.
Sure.
So the building in front, is that the dorm building?
Correct.
Okay, so the main building, what you call Building A, that wood material is going all the way around. So if we had no screening on Stockton, we would be seeing that wood material.
Correct.
And you said that the building will not be illuminated at night?
Correct.
Will the Red Bull stipulate to that for the board?
You mean out exterior?
Yeah, we aren't currently illuminating any facades. The only lighting outside the building is to illuminate the egress pathway for code.
I understand that.
Yeah, we stipulate to that.
Okay. Okay. Now, talking about the change in use, the potential change in use of the Building A, you, in response to one of these gentlemen's questions, were aware that they were no longer going to bring the front office people from Harrison to Morris Township,
I
correct?
think that is a decision that Red Bull is still trying to make.
Okay. How many square feet did you allocate to those approximately 100 employees?
Level 3 has a square footage of 18,200 square feet.
And was level 3, as originally conceived by you, totally dedicated to those 100 employees?
It was, yes.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that if those 100 employees didn't come, the building could be reduced by 1 story?
Operationally, I don't think that's what we want to do.
Okay. Now, you use the term regenerative, remember? Are you aware that in July, Bowman, you know who they are? Bowman Engineering?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't personally know them.
Okay. they referred to that space as dormitory space. Are you aware of that? That it was being changed to dormitory space?
I think what I've heard is that it's regenerative rooms for the professional players.
Okay, I would just refer you, it's a memorandum to John Amorosa from Bowman dated July 18, 2022. And they do refer to the change of space as dormitory space. But that, if you don't know, that's fine. But
Well, I was going to say what I can tell you what I've seen on the plans, the alternate use plans. And so they are single use rooms for the players to rest between games. And it's not long term. It's basically if they get back at 3 a.m. and need to not drive home to get in a wreck in the middle of the night, and then they get up and go at 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, you did say that when you did the design, the entire top floor was for the front office people.
Right. That was the first scheme.
Okay. And Mr. Kino? Hi.
Hi.
The mayor asked you a question, and the way you answered the question raised a question for me. He asked you about the replacement of plantings and trees. And was it fair to say that you kind of put that on the contractors? That whatever contractor the Red Bulls use, whether you get a 1-year guarantee, a 2-year guarantee, a 3-year guarantee, that will be how plantings are replaced?
Yeah, so we will have, absolutely, when a contractor installs plants, we're going to have contracts with all the installers. So yeah, we will ask them to stand by that. But if they don't, we still are committing to maintain the landscape.
Beyond the 3 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and I would hope there'd be a stipulation to that. We who live in the Hovnanian development are aware that some plants haven't lasted 4 years, but 1 year would be very short.
Right.
Kind of a reverse issue for the landscaping.
I'll just say the difference between, we're going to be living there.
Yeah.
You know, this is going to be our home as it is yours. And, you know, Hovnanian is not living there.
And I truly believe that in terms of screening and making this attractive, you're trying. You're aware of the sensitivities of the neighborhood, and they're well founded because we're concerned about our property values. A reverse issue for me is, let's assume you do great screening. You mentioned arborvitaes, for instance. I know they can grow like crazy. Now, I don't want to see the building. I'm sure it's beautiful. I don't want to see it. But I don't want to have a 100-foot tree blocking my sunset either. Can evergreens and trees like that be topped?
Any tree can be topped, and certainly that particular species can also be topped. If it gets to the point where we feel that it's overgrown, it's part of maintaining all of those trees to certain height and health.
Are you aware that those of us who look out at Stockton have stunning sunsets? We're facing west.
Based on the topography, I could imagine there would be.
So we could, theoretically, you can protect our sunsets while still providing a nice buffer for us.
We'll certainly consider that as much as possible.
Thank you. Ms. Bird, in your testimony, you referred to 1-year growth and full tree growth.
Correct.
I was wondering if in your head, full tree growth had a certain amount of time. Was that 5 years, 10 years, or is that a variable?
You want to talk?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so with mature growth, some experts will say trees reach their mature growth 10 to 12 years, generally speaking. So for example, if we plant an 18-foot tall tree that grows at a rate of 2 feet per year, in 10 years, that tree is 38 feet tall and could be considered a mature tree.
Okay.
Generally speaking.
Okay. Thank you. One last thing. Could you put up the picture of night lighting? There was a picture where you showed the Red Bull sign in the field, and there was some night lighting. Is Mr. Zeller still here?
No.
Well, Yeah. Is it your understanding, that's the light tower there, right? You go up, point to the light, and those are actually the lights, correct?
Correct.
Is it your understanding that those were going to be shielded so that we would not see those lights? And we would only know there was lighting because if we were looking at the green field, we would see it there?
Yeah, my understanding is they will be shielded.
So that's not, yeah, it was a statement that Mr. Zeller said this is an accurate depiction of what it'll look like at night. It's your understanding, and quite frankly, it was my understanding from the last meeting, that we would not see those lights, that they would be shielded.
Yeah, I can clarify this a little bit. So we have a rendering firm, V Studios, who does these renders for us, and we guide them and give them the specs on these. So I agree, they will be shielded. And I think what you're kind of seeing in this ambient light is a little bit more of the twilight that they took this render at that time of day. So this sort of glow in the sky.
Yeah,
so
I'm not talking about the glow. I think I see the bulbs.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
No, I understand what you're saying.
Uh-huh.
Yes, but given the type of light that we're specifying and the fact that it will be shielded, I agree with Bob that you're not going to see this.
Okay, I think that's it. Can you give me 1 second to just look at my notes? Oh, one last thing. You did say that the equipment on the roof of Building A would be sunken.
Correct. It will be sitting on the level 3 slab and will be shielded with walls.
Okay, and that's not a working process. That's how it's going to be, as far as you know.
That is where we are in the design process, and I'm convinced that's where we'll be.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's all. Oh, do you have a picture of what the decorative fencing is going to look like?
I don't currently.
You, Mr. Aquino?
No, sir.
Are you involved in that?
The decorative
No.
fencing?
I am not.
Yeah. I believe that will be architectural,
That'll be architectural?
like in our scope, not landscape scope.
Oh, okay, but
Yeah.
you don't have anything to show us.
Currently, no.
Do you have in your head what you think it will be?
Not yet.
My
Which area in
recollection is there's a
particular are
detail
you?
of that on the plans.
Yeah.
And that, I believe, was reviewed by
I don't have
Mr.
that.
Barrington.
No,
Okay.
I don't have that.
I don't recall exactly what it looked like. I thought they might know. But thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Yes, Margaret D'Souza, 3 Green Knolls Road. Okay, I just actually have a couple of questions. One is on the sign that says New York Red Bulls Training Complex. Do we know, so how long is that? Because I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Let's take a look.
So what's the length? I know it's 6 feet high,
118 feet, 10 inches.
118 feet.
It basically runs behind the entire spectator stands.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you said that would be illuminated, right?
Correct.
Okay, and do we know what colors are going to be on that illuminated sign? Is it going to have red?
Currently, I don't know what the renderers had depicted it as like white light, but I think that's still a design discussion we need to have.
Okay, so you don't know what color the light.
I don't think there's been a commitment on it yet.
Okay. And then obviously, and I know you guys, you can only go by what you have, but obviously the lighting that we have been seeing as far as like what it's kind of going to look like, we don't really know exactly, right? Because we know that with the FAA, they're probably going to put lights on top of those lights.
Correct.
So no matter really how well the Bulls do on their lighting, we're still a possibility we're going to have lighting, when most likely we will, over because of the airplanes.
Right. Unfortunately, the FAA has their own body in mind, right?
And will we get to see what that's going to look like before?
I
full
don't think so.
approval?
I think that I've heard that from previous testimony that is on they're on their own timeline.
So how can it, I mean, I don't
I think-
understand how you could kind of make a
Mhm.
decision on that without really kind of knowing what it's really going to look like as far as the lights go.
I don't think I can comment on that.
Okay. Yeah, so really, it doesn't help a whole lot to see the lighting because we really don't know. There's probably going to be lighting on top of that that's going to affect our view and our lighting in our neighborhood.
I can't comment on that.
Okay, well, it's probably obvious. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, Rich Tangle, 16 Featherly Road. A couple questions. Just first on credentials. Ms. Berg, you're not licensed in the state of New Jersey.
No, but I'm licensed in the state of California, which is
Okay.
very difficult to get licensed in.
So does the
Much more difficult than most states, FYI.
So it's not a requirement of the board for licensed professionals regarding public safety to be licensed in the state?
No, actually, it's very common when a rather large applicant such as the Red Bulls comes in, that the ultimate person providing testimony, the only requirement is that they're ultimately under the supervision of someone who is New Jersey licensed. You see it in the legal field and the field of engineering, architecture, et cetera. It's not a strict requirement for the person testifying in front of the board to be credentialed in New Jersey.
Do attorneys have to be credentialed?
Actually, no.
Are you
It
credentialed?
can be-
Well, I'm trying to see, just based on expert, so I guess I'm leading to a question of, so this one facility that's a dorm, it's a residence, whatever. So what's governing your design if you're not licensed in the state of New Jersey, haven't done similar facilities in New Jersey? What governs your design with regard to
it's
health, safety, welfare?
It's non-jurisdictional. I've done several training facilities. I am an expert in that type of facility. So the fact that it's in New Jersey doesn't mean that it's unique.
And if I could jump in, I'm sorry, but the person signing the drawings will be licensed in New Jersey. She just works for and with the person who will be signing the drawings.
Correct.
Okay. I'm just with regard, when you mention design professional, generally licensed in the state where they're in responsible charge.
Ms. Bird works for Gensler. There is a representative of Gensler here tonight, Jack Carota, who is licensed in New Jersey and will be
And part of our
signing
team,
Okay. Why didn't he testify?
because I'm the designer.
Okay. So he's not,
because she has the expertise in sport facilities. And that's what you want. You really want, that's, as she mentioned, non-jurisdictional. So
Okay.
she's one of the, country experts in design and sport facilities.
okay. Ms. Berg, then this leads to another question. You've mentioned you worked on these facilities elsewhere.
Correct.
Have you worked on a facility like this that is sited couple hundred feet from residential dwellings, homes
Yes, I
like
have.
this?
I have.
Can you mention where?
Yes, LAFC training facility is nestled in a residential neighborhood on the edge of Cal State LA's campus. And it was a neighborhood that actually really wanted them there. So it was a bit of a different atmosphere.
They wanted them there? Okay. Was it lighting and so forth too there?
Yeah, they don't have field lighting,
What-
but they do have parking lot lighting and building lighting.
No, field lighting. The big issue is lighting that's visible. So field lighting, was that there?
No, there's no field lighting.
Okay,
there.
so that's a big difference. Okay. Was the FAA lighting?
No, because they aren't near the flight path.
Okay, so big difference. I would say that doesn't compare, but okay, thank you. With regard to health and safety, getting to that, and what professional is governing, like with regard, are there other facilities like this in the township that you're aware of?
No, I
No?
I don't know
Okay.
of any.
So with regard to, say, firefighting, there's a residential dwelling here, a fire breaks out. Are you familiar, did your design get governed by building codes and firefighting and so forth? How does that work?
I'm just curious how this relates to the earlier testimony.
Well, you're
No,
saying
just-
you're the design, you're
I
the
am.
expert,
Mhm.
and you have to take into account various things in design. So isn't putting a fire out, the health and safety of the occupants, one of them?
The building would be required to meet all BOCA, all codes, fire department, building codes. So that's standard.
Right.
Okay, but she didn't say she's following BOCA, but okay,
Well, I think as a licensed professional, that is what we do.
I hope, okay. Now, with regard to the landscaping there, so there's a breakup here in responsibility. So with regard to tree growth, Mr. Kina, is it? Mr. Kina?
Aquino.
Mr. Aquino. Where have you seen in your expertise trees grow 3 feet in New Jersey each year?
We have a project, well, a number of projects in the New York area. And as I said during my testimony, tree growth is a factor of one, real experience with real projects, and the second being available reporting from various agencies and organizations. So that's where I got that information from.
So you don't have direct knowledge of that happening in New Jersey, this part of New Jersey?
I couldn't offer that at this point, but based on what I know, that is what I'm reporting.
And the reason I mention it is because you're kind of representing these trees are going to grow like crazy and they'll be 40, 50 feet tall in 10 years. So, okay, that's just why I'm mentioning it. So we get a better sense of what the block is. Now, you mentioned on the Green Holes Featherly side, you're not really planning anything substantial there and no solid fencing, the block lighting. So my question is, have you walked the site?
I have.
Okay.
And I was there today also.
Okay. So you know that wooded stretch between this site and Featherly Green Knolls is not a heavily wooded area, correct? And it's losing its vegetation by the year from deers and just natural dying off and storms and everything.
Right.
So are you aware of that?
My impression is it's impressionistic. It's something that I observe. I mean, without knowing the growth of the forest and kind of what it's been through, I can't really scientifically tell you the health of that forest. But based on what I've seen and what I have observed out there, it's a typical forest going through age.
Did you observe a lot of fallen trees everywhere?
Well, with the storms, you'll get that. Also age. I mean, the urban forests go through cycles. It's all about succession. And so the approach we're taking is to intervene in that succession and add more tree planting to kind of thicken that forest growth.
Okay, it just didn't sound like you were planning much on that side between that buffer, so to speak.
Our plans show tree planting mainly on the evergreens to create that buffer that we're looking for in terms of the functionality of the landscape.
Okay. And with regard to the renderings, I don't know which expert wants to address this, but I'll mention it's kind of misleading in the sense that it looks like they're from ground level, but what does everything look like from a second story of a house? You're up 20 feet or so. What does the eyeball see? You know, everyone isn't sitting in their car looking at this. And it's from the dwelling. So I didn't see any renderings when you're 20 feet in the air or higher from a dwelling in the neighborhood looking at the lighting, which is, I would say you would characterize that as make a difference, correct?
I'm sorry, what was the question in that?
If you're elevated higher in your viewpoint, wouldn't the rendering look different?
I think that is why we added these view cones to the sections to show that if you are standing at the second floor slab and you're looking out your window, this is what you will see.
But in particular with regard to lighting and so forth, that looked like there was a lot of streetscape views there. And I guess I'm getting to the point where, did you do anything to make sure the renderings are accurate? Did you hoist any balloons or anything to make sure your perspective was correct? So say you're standing in Green Knolls Road or Featherly Road, the cul-de-sac there. Was there anything an object put on the far side, your site, and the picture taken of that object so you make sure your rendering's correct, or are you just doing this all by computer?
We used the topography maps to map out all of the grade changes.
So nothing actual. Is that correct? Have you heard of a balloon test? Have you heard
I
of
saw
that?
the balloon in that one view, but the water tower is in the background as well, and that's an accurate height representation.
Okay. Now, and the reason I'm asking the question is just from my viewpoint, I could see someone walking that trail, which is through, as you characterize it, the heavily wooded buffer and all that. So things are very visible through that existing wooded buffer there, or line of trees, I'll say, not really a buffer, because I could see through it. So just want to bring that point out there. And so the renderings then were just, again, all computerized, not done from something actually put out to get a true characterization or representation of what it may look like. Is
So
that
we
correct?
did take photographs of those existing areas and have the renderers match the views to the existing topography and angle.
Okay. And could there be, or is there any design in the landscape plan to put a solid wall or fence between the neighborhoods, and particularly the neighborhood of Green Knolls, Featherly, and the site that would block lighting from cars and so forth? Because Honeywell did that. They had a solid wall fence when they were a neighbor back. So is anything like that planned by the landscape architect or by you, Ms. Berg, as part of the design?
Not that I know of, not at this
Okay.
time.
Could that be part of the design without hindering the design?
I don't think it's necessary at this point in time.
Well, it blocks viewpoints though. And to be a good neighbor, as you say, neighborhood friendly, that would, I think if you asked us, it would be neighborhood friendly.
I think that was the attempt to add all of the evergreens so that, because they do start with very low growth branches, and so it would block the light from the car headlights down low.
Okay. And just one question again on lighting. Your buildings, you mentioned you're going to be lighting the pathways, exit, entry, egress, what have you. There won't be any general lighting mounted on the buildings shining out? Flood lighting, if you will?
No, it's really only to illuminate the walk path, and it would be through bollards.
Okay, all right. And again, on noise, who's going to address noise from the activities at this location? An expert in noise. Is that?
My understanding is that we will comply with all noise ordinances that the city requires.
But this is not really architectural.
No.
Okay, but I guess I haven't heard any expert testimony on what noise is being generated by the activities here. I mean, to just say you're going to comply, that means nothing. What are we going to hear? I guess that's what I'm asking. Who's going to tell us what we're going to
I think
hear?
the loudest potential noise are from chillers and generators, and we're going to make sure that they meet the noise requirements at the property line.
Well, I kind of disagree because I could show you an example of.
We're not. If you want to give examples, save that for your comments at the end.
For statements, okay, all right. Because I was at Central Park recently and heard everything there.
Are you providing testimony right now, or are you going to save that for later?
No, I'm just helping.
Is that a question?
Did I see it? That's the question, I guess. Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Next.
And DeSalvo for Delano Court. Just for the landscape architect, Mr. Aquino, a quick question. So the rendering that shows the plantings going, I guess, from Stockton down along Prescott going west.
Yes.
Yeah, 5A and 5B. That, I guess, as long as it's like the western view going down Prescott West.
I think it's further. Yeah.
It would be going, yeah, yes, that. So the trees that will be planted, are they just average evergreens? Are there giant arborvitaes being like the Leyland cypress trees?
We have a variety, the green giant, the Norway spruce, the Japanese cedar, Wichita blue juniper, the columnar juniper, Australian pine, and then a host of deciduous trees.
So over the course of growth, will that, in your professionalism, as much as you know that the plant will grow, obviously you can't predict the speed they each grow, but will the evergreens create like a buffered wall? And the reason I ask is a concern I have as a resident is that Prescott is a very narrow road, or not to average size. And my concern is when you're able to see the fields from Prescott, my concern is that people would pull over to view players and take a view of what they can see. But if it was buffered and they really couldn't see, like a giant arborvitae can really make an evergreen wall is what they can do. And they can get up to 50 feet tall and make a wall, it's in essence. So that was just my concern, is if there's too many spaces like this rendering right now, and I know this isn't 100%, but not to have spaces where cars could pull up. And someone who's a huge Red Bulls fan might want to see players practicing. It would be a concern on a narrow roadway that's only like 20 feet.
So a few thoughts regarding what you've described there. When you look at this image, from the curb towards the campus, there's a slope that goes down towards the field. So that right there would probably prohibit people from wanting to get any further than the curb. But if they did stop at the curb, they're stopping in the middle of the street also. The trees are planted triangular spacing, and they're laid out in such a way where there's enough space for them to mature and have their own space as they mature. We don't want to plant them so close together day one that they're just crowding each other out and they don't perform. So the goal is to completely create a contiguous buffer, physical and visual there. No gaps.
Okay, and so I guess back maybe to Ms. Bird about signage. Will there be specific signage saying no, like idling or stopping over there specifically for that area?
Yeah. Yes, we can accommodate that.
Great, and will there be a stipulation put in there that there'll be signage that cars cannot stop there?
No stopping, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. Larry Kessler, 1 Aldrich Court. First, I'd like just a clarification. I thought 50 feet was the limit for the height of a building, but then I thought I heard that the indoor half field is going to be 64 feet high. Can somebody clarify that?
Yeah, the zoning does allow that, but that is the only building on campus that's that high.
So that is within the zoning, 64 feet?
Specifically for the indoor field, yes.
Can we go back to that picture again of the signage of the Red Bulls complex?
This one or the rendering?
The one that actually shows the sign that says Red Bulls Training Complex.
So the rendering. It might take me a second to find it. Here we go.
Right. Where exactly is that sign located?
It's right behind the spectator stands. So I can show you on the signage plan, 1 second. So see this line that's pointing to B1?
Right.
That's it right there, that thin line.
So does that mean that signage is going to be visible from the street that goes through there from Stockton Drive?
I think if you're looking through the trees, it can be visible.
Well,
if
the
you go
trees are
here-
not a wall. You can certainly,
Right.
the
You see
rendering
bits of
certainly
it.
shows the sign.
You see bits of it.
And is that going to be lit up at night?
Business hours, right? Yeah. Do you want to? I was gonna say during business hours.
Yeah, I don't think a sign like that's very appealing to a residential neighborhood that you can drive by and see houses on one side of the street and see that sign on the other side of the street.
Ms. Bird, can you go to the sort of site plan and show where it is? Because I don't think there's any residential on the other side of the street. Is there? No, not directly. Right.
There's a large tree. There's a large tree buffer between. And so you're not really getting a clear view of this because you would have to see between all these
So
trees.
can you point to where the sign is on
Yes.
this?
It's this white dashed
It's
line.
over there. And so it's across from Field 9. And it has the trees and buffers there, that island, some other big mature trees. So it's not across from any residential.
It also has the understory planting, which has anywhere from 2 to 3.5 feet tall planting from street level.
So is it right across from Stockton or it isn't from what you're showing here?
It's this white line right here, right behind the viewing area within this planted
It's
area.
in the interior of the site,
Right. It's not on the curb
Also-
line.
across
Okay.
from Field 9.
Okay,
Stockton is right here.
Yeah.
getting back to our wonderful Field 9. um, If I'm looking out the windows from a house on Aldridge, and I think according to the rendering, Field 9 actually encroaches up into Oheka also. If the people on the corner of Oheka are looking out their windows, as well as the people on Aldridge, what are they going to see? Can we actually, for the next meeting, get a rendering of that? And also get a rendering of not just the ground level, but what am I going to see from my deck and what am I going to see from my second floor?
Yeah, we had 36 renderings. Unfortunately, we can't do renderings from everybody's window. And
Well, that's important because that field,
understand.
field number 9 is a highly discussed field that the neighborhood really doesn't want it at all.
I think Mr. Rassiopi is speaking, but can you use the microphone? Someone is speaking and not using a microphone.
Well, can the board ask the Bulls to come back with the rendering that'll show what it's going to do to the houses on Aldridge and Oheka and what their views are going to be? Not just ground level, but I have a great room with big windows. What am I going to see out those windows? What am I going to see out my deck and out my second floor? And not just my house, all of Aldridge and the corners on Oheka also. I think the board should know if they approve this, what they're doing to those houses.
Just so you understand, these renderings are not something that happens overnight. I don't do them, but Ms. Bird can speak about. They take 3 to 4 weeks sometimes to get. So we did 36 renderings. That's why they're hard to get. And so we tried to do it in different areas and accomplish the broadest spectrum we could. We will ask and see if these renderers can do it. We can't guarantee it. she's gonna follow up with their renderers to see if they can do that perspective. But we're only, if we tried to get even more renderings, and they they shut the Red Bulls down. And you could imagine if they shut this client down, it's not easy to get these renderings. I just want you to appreciate it's really not easy, and it takes some time to get rendering.
I would hope that the board would want to see those renderings before they make any kind of decision. I think it's quite important. Can we go back to the signage going up Stockton?
Would you like to see the rendering or the graphics package?
Yeah, I wanted the placement of the signs.
Okay. Let's see.
Okay, the one sort of in the middle on the right-hand side, it says 3D1. Can you tell me what that sign is going to say and how big is it?
So that is a directional signage. So that is the pillar that is 6 feet tall by, I believe, 2 feet wide. Yeah.
Does it really need to be that big? That sign is on the corner of my property.
We'll be reviewing the signs.
Yeah, so besides seeing Field 9, I'll see this 6 foot tall sign out my window, possibly.
We've discussed.
We're gonna be reviewing the signs, so we'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
I believe an exhibit will be presented at the next meeting, as discussed by the board planner as well.
Okay, I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Vincent O'Connor. I live at 3 Aldrich Court. First off, I want to thank Mr. Flowers for raising the question as to why there isn't any renderings of the view from the backs of the homes and the decks facing towards the north, where the Field 9 training field for the youth would be located. Unfortunately, I think it speaks volumes also as to the lack of concern by the developer, because the Field 9s have been a subject of debate here since the first meeting.
Sir, again, we're solely in a public.
And in a time,
if you want to discuss and make comment, you'll have.
I can be finished in less time than you taking to correct me. My question is that I would think it would be maybe beneficial to the developer, to Mr. Aquino, to Ms. Berg, to see the perspective that one has when standing in any of these homes. From the entrance, 2 steps or 3 steps to enter any of the homes on Aldrich Court, there's at least 10-foot elevation change as you go towards the back of the home. So we're actually looking over the field. And we're going to ask you to maybe, especially if your renderings, which might not take into consideration that elevation change or can be completed by the next meeting, it would be very simple for Mr. Amoruso to authorize you to come into one of those homes there to give you some sense of perspective. So Mr. Aquino, in developing his topography, he could, perhaps come up with some suggestions. We've only seen a plan of what you wish to put there, but with no comparison to the elevation and the heights of the screening that's going to be constructed. I think it's 4 30-foot poles are going to be constructed there along the back of that field.
I'm sorry, do you have a question?
I just asked the question.
They've said that they were going to.
Can someone visit one of these homes to give them a perspective as to what would be necessary and what the challenge really is? Realizing that the developer didn't think it was at all important. I think that's what Ms. Bird said, that we only do what we're basically told to do, and we know there was no emphasis on that perspective. So
we said we'll see what we can do.
We will
Well,
talk to, we will
why don't
talk.
we just make a plan today? Mr. Amoruso could certainly come over with
Please,
the
they've answered the
photographer.
question.
The person, the firm that does the renderings,
Right, we
is
have to
not
check
here.
with them.
we tried to get more renderings. We couldn't get them.
We don't need a rendering.
That's what
All
you're
we need is a
looking at.
camera.
These are
And you can
renderings.
see exactly what 1, 3, 5, and 7 and 9 are looking at when they look to the north from the back of their homes. So I would be more than glad to volunteer my home.
But if you don't need a rendering, then why are you asking for one?
Well, we need something, and you don't have to be a wise
You
guy,
do need a rendering.
okay?
Okay, so we said we're gonna try to get one.
And if you can, I said you could visit the homes, and I think that might even be a more accurate representation.
No, actually, I mean, I didn't want to do it here, but Mr. Amorosa has said we will want to visit one of the homes.
Well, thank you. I
Okay,
appreciate.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Do you really, you know my name by now? No, it's all right. Andrew Kessler, 11 Wolf Road. First of all, thank you both for your detailed presentation tonight. I do have a question you were talking about. I have a lot of questions, and I know it's time, but this is important to us because we live here in the community, and this is a business for you. This is our home. This is our investment. So the berm you were talking about continuing, the question I brought up last time, could you bring up the picture? There was a rendering of Aldridge, what the view
Yes,
is.
one
and-
second.
Thank you. Okay, if I may. Whoops. The one before. Okay. There was.
Oh, sorry,
another
it's 2B.
picture.
This one, right? Stockton to Aldrich?
Nope, the one that showed the, well, either way.
The one where field 9 is off to the right.
So two things. You said these are accurate or whatever. On the right is one Aldridge. That home, the corner sits on a hill. It's elevated, that corner, and it's not reflected in that picture. It's not a flat driveway and it's not a flat front yard. It's a high hill. So the stoop and the house actually overlooks. So you're going to be looking right into the, and there was a better picture that showed the building right across.
Let me see on the map. You can tell me which one on this site map.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this one right here. 2A.
2A, okay.
Okay. So another question, are you aware there was an access way, an opening, a break, it stops the berm. It's not all the way down as of now.
Right, but I think the idea is that we will make a continuous berm
And when will that be in the progress?
during construction.
What phase of construction?
Yeah, first phase of construction.
Because right now it's an open street there. There's
Right.
access. So I'm asking, will that be closed off right away?
Yeah, so when we start construction, there will be a construction fence there or some fence there to block off that access. We talked about that. And of course, the engineer, the township engineer would have to approve whatever we do.
Okay, absolutely.
But as part of phase 1 construction, that berm will be installed.
We go to picture 10. It says not to scale.
Well, that's just the output there. It's a rendering.
Okay.
Could you please, I'm
So
sorry,
This isn't correct either. That home is raised up, so you're actually.
could you use a microphone, please?
Sure. So once again, that scale is not correct because that's not a flat corner. Aldridge, that home is raised up on a hill.
Again, this is providing comment, though. You're disputing the.
I invite you to go look at, they're saying this was correct.
That's fine. You
Mike,
have
okay,
comment that-
is this picture correct of that home that sits there?
This is correct based on the topo maps that we gave our.
Were
vendors.
you physically at that corner of
I have been at
Aldridge?
that corner.
So is it flat, that corner?
It looks like this is slightly raised. There's a crest in the road right here.
No. Could you review that, go out there again, because that's not correct. It's a hill.
It looks higher.
It's much high. Well, I'm just asking if that could be verified because
We can verify it.
it's above the berm.
We're raising the berm as well. But we can go out there.
Because, so before you said the topography and all the maps were correct, I'm just clarifying that that one
Thank you.
is not correct. If we could go to the street with all the signs again that we just saw before.
Which page? Or which view?
It was, well,
Keep going.
13 and then how the growth of the trees here, what phase is this? Or
This is full growth.
full growth? So is there a picture of this? And I think there was a picture of the home here that showed the building right across from it.
This is year one. And the previous slide was mature. Right.
Okay, and you said you took into account the homeowners and to be good neighbors. So is that the best spot to have a building right across from a home?
Yes, the setback is quite large.
So how far, could we go to the diagram pictures that show?
That show the setbacks.
Point out, Ms. Burke, can you point out how far the main building is from the home? And both at Aldrich and then, you know, at the, as it goes back even further.
So currently, the first grouping of townhomes, we have from the very closest corner to the Academy dorm building. It's a distance of 186 feet, 5.5 inches. And that same point going all the way to the main building, the 3-story building, is 278 feet. So almost the length of a football field.
Okay, and the height, you said it's approximately 50 feet. So,
But then I just wanted to
Yeah,
show how
so
it steps
as
back.
as you go to the second grouping of townhomes to the south, it steps back and you have a distance of 252 feet, 9 inches. And then from the third group to the closest point, it's 335 feet.
And how about to the main building from the west?
So the furthest grouping of townhomes we have to the main building is 481, so pretty close to 500 feet.
and being, in your opinion, and it's approximately 50 feet, that building. So how is that going to affect the townhomes, like we discussed about the sunset, or blocking them, or blocking the homes from getting their exposure? How will that affect the home's exposure?
Right. Yeah. So I'll go back to the sections. So given what we were talking about earlier in terms of the townhomes being raised up a bit, they are at a higher elevation. And so they really are kind of quite far back. And by the time you run a line straight across, you are halfway up the second story of this building. It's similar in the second view. Let me show you this one from our elevational points.
So my question, at the 50 feet, it's not going to affect, your exposure to the sun, or?
I don't think I think it'll be in silhouette, and it'll have the sunset above it.
So it's going to block any light directly going to the home, because right now it's all open views.
Right. I think what's tough is any development there is going to change the atmosphere, right?
And was my question, is that the best spot for a building that's going to be across from residential that's going to change the atmosphere?
Yeah, we had the building location.
Rather than a field we have no objection to. Than looking at a brick wall.
Well, we're making it quite nice, and hopefully it will blend in with the surrounding environment. So.
And also, I think there was, I not think, but I know there was testimony earlier in the presentations that it was also meant to act as a buffer for the lights, for the sound, for the things that are somewhat objectionable to you.
And could you describe the screening walls on top of the roof you said for the equipment?
Yes, currently those are solid walls, so they will be an extension of that same solid parapet wall to hide the mechanical units.
Okay, just give me, I'm sorry, keeping everybody, just give me a minute here. I have a lot of notes. Solar panels on top of the roof. I don't know why, smirking and laughing, but it's okay. The solar panels on top of the roof, will that reflect or anything,
No,
for the homes?
those
or
will have
the-
to lay
or
quite
for
flat
sites?
because
Okay.
we can't tilt them up. Right.
And then, I don't know the number, that building C, you called it, that was the field? Could we
The
go to
indoor
that
half field,
slide?
yeah. Or did you want to look at the rendering?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
So that's a field, correct? Where they could practice, where they could play.
Yeah, it's artificial turf inside.
So why is that called C and not numbered field 10?
Because it's a building.
But in all actuality, there are building, regardless of building, there are 10 fields.
There's 9.5, yeah.
So irregardless, there's 9.5 fields. So shouldn't that say 9.5 and not C? Because it is a soccer field.
I think it's about how you document it. It's totally different because it does have an enclosure. So that's why we've gone with the lettered designations for anything that's enclosed.
And prior, one of our neighbors discussed about field 9, and you could all gather that to the neighborhood, it's important to us. So that is a field and that could be used for the same purposes as field 9, and all this contention about being good neighbors. Don't you think that would help if you could use that and eliminate field 9? And we want to be good neighbors, and I don't know how much you're giving to us.
Yeah, I think the issue is that all of the fields are present and accounted for different groups. And so while field 9 is really focused on youth and youth camps, it's not the right size or placement for this use inside the building.
So it's a business decision and not a community to be a good neighbor decision.
I'm not sure I can comment on that because I do think the Red Bull is doing quite a bit to buffer and understand.
So is it taken into account 5 days a week and about 80 kids, the noise level from field 9 to the homes?
I think in the schedule, it wasn't all year round, 5 days a week.
But still 5 days a week from, I think they said 8 a.m. to 4:30.
In the summer.
So the whole bottom line, it's not just from us, but that C is considered, to me, I don't know,
I'm
that's
sorry,
considered
this
a field.
testimony, this question is not related to the testimony.
Well, I
or
just
the
asked her if
architectural.
that's a field or why is it C?
That's fine, and she answered that, but we're going into now.
Oh, my computer's gonna die.
We want to leave.
And then another question,
Okay, sure.
behind field 9?
Sorry, 1 second. I have to plug in my computer.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Behind field 9, the parking and I guess the restroom buildings. I know all of the Red Bulls property, you're gonna have security and it's gonna be gated and access. Is that gonna be gated and secured?
Yes, it is.
So you won't be able to get into that parking lot or use those facilities. They're gonna be
correct,
guarded and closed all the
Locked.
time.
Yes.
Okay. And then maintaining those grounds or overspill or
What is overspill?
going back to, you had spoken about the refreshment stand, or you're going to have something like that as well?
In the field house. So that
In the
would
field
that
house.
would be in this part right here in the field house, and it would only be open during games on the competition field.
And then the other picture that showed Stockton with those signs 6 feet, which we already know you're going to
Mhm.
look into the height of them. If we could just go to that slide.
So D1.
Or just not so close up, less. So question to you, driving in, is it taken into consideration that it's also residential and not just Red Bulls? Because it looks like you're driving to Newark Airport, Gate C.
Well, it's not quite that bad.
But so here's all taken into account from all these decks, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's one you're going to see. There's 4. There's more. If you go Columbia Turnpike, I think there was closer to Columbia Turnpike.
So that's the monument sign. So there's
1, 2.
D1.
So can we count how
So
many signs?
some are distinguishing the traffic on the way in, and some are for the traffic on the way out. So we've got 1 D1 on the way in, 2 D1 on the way in.
So how many
3,
total along
4,
Stockton?
5, and 6 total.
And Mr. Kessler, I mean, Mr. Kessler, you have been strong about wanting to keep the traffic from the Red Bulls away from the residential. This directional signage is for the purpose of directing people to the nearest parking lot or to Field 9, so that nobody is confused in driving through.
And are you aware that the main entrance to Columbia Park, the townhomes from Columbia Turnpike, if you're going out, there's a no left, and going out Park Avenue, there's a no left turn, but people still go legal left. Even I witnessed something. I spoke to the fire chief about that as well. Were you aware?
We
You know,
need to
signs can't always
stick to
protect.
questions, Mr. Kessler.
Do you know our community has certain directionals as we have now where you could turn onto Columbia or turn onto Park Avenue?
Yes. And the traffic expert will be discussing this at the next meeting.
Okay. And you find it's fine to Aldridge and all the people that along Aldridge and also Hika, they're going to look out and see 7 or 8 signs?
No, we'll look at all the signs. It's a fair point, and we should look at all the signs. We'll look at the sign package.
Because
But it's a balance, right? We want to have enough signage so people aren't confused and they get to the parking lot you want them to. But at the same time, it's a fair point. We don't want to overdo signs.
and it's a balance and we want to be good neighbors
Yeah.
too. So
Agreed.
you're driving into not only Red Bulls, you're driving into homes.
No, we understand.
Okay, and I know you said about that I was so concerned about traffic flow, and I don't know if I'm allowed to state this or not, but
If it doesn't have, if it's not a question pertaining to architecture or landscape architecture, it should either wait for the traffic consultant or be saved for public comment.
okay. Okay, and now to landscaping. And backtrack to the other question about creating a wall, you know, evergreens or arborvitaes. Could there be something along the berm to more so when you see that building, it's a little sparse. It's not really filled in.
Yeah, we need to take a break. I'm sorry. We need to take a 5-minute break.
Okay, but we live there every day.
Well,
too.
we're planning on staying on going till 10, and now it's 10:20.
We should, you know, I would appreciate it if we could finish these two experts.
Well, that's it. So we don't have to bring them back.
Can you poll the audience, see how many people are going to comment before we?
How many other people are planning on asking questions of these witnesses? One other?
5 minutes enough? Yeah, I just, you know. It's one more question, and then it's one more question, and it's one more person, another question, so I'm gonna take a break.
No, you're right. You're right.
Because we don't want to have inaccurate transcripts. We don't want.
Mr. Chairman, I'd
Sounds like
recommend
a-
we do a 5-minute break, but I would
would recommend we finish these witnesses' testimony and questionings from the public for this evening.
Finish it for this evening.
Correct.
Yes.
5 minutes.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, let's resume our meeting. Sonia, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Quillen?
Here.
Mr. Quillen?
Yes, I'm here.
Unmute. George, you're on mute.
Mr. Quillen?
I'm not on mute and I am here. Can you hear me?
Mr. Nunn?
Here.
Mr. Jordan?
Here.
Ms. Van Order?
Here.
Ms. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. Vine?
Here.
Mr. Flowers?
Here.
Mr. Flynn?
Here.
Mr. Slate?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Fishinger?
Here.
Mr. Benoit?
Here.
And I, Sonia Santiago, here.
Thank you. Okay, let's resume with the questions, and please make them only questions. If you start going into comments, we're going to have to cut you off because it's getting late. Are you done with your questions?
Mr. Kessler.
Mr. Kessler, you done with your questions?
tonight?
I think the feedback from all of you should be done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you for continuing. Rich Tangle, 16 Featherly Road. Thanks again. Ms. Berg, just a question regarding, you mentioned you did a similar facility like this in California in a residential area.
Correct.
And I understand you said no lighting. So in your professional opinion, does this facility require lighting? Why
Yes,
does it have lighting?
It does
that
if you
one
want
doesn't?
to operate after 5 p.m. And I can tell you why the other LAFC did not have lighting, because it was only the professional team. They were done by 3 p.m. every day, and they didn't have people on the fields past then.
Okay, so for the professional team, lighting is not required. Is that correct? In your professional
Well,
opinion?
currently on our fields for the pro teams,
From your experience.
those aren't lit either.
Excuse me?
Fields 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are the men's pro fields and the women's pro fields on this site, aren't lit either.
So the lighting
It's for the academy.
is not for the professional,
It's for
not
the
for Red
academy.
Bulls?
The lighting on our fields is for the academy who practices after dark.
Is that required?
Yes, it is,
Why is that?
because they practice after dark,
Why can't they practice inside?
because they don't have indoor fields for 4 indoor fields.
Sir, I'm going to have
Okay.
to ask you to redirect your questions to either architecture or landscape architecture. Your questions are beginning to go into.
Okay, all right. The reason I'm getting there is because she testified that this was a similar facility to what she did in California, but there's no lighting there, so it's not a similar facility. So that's why I asked the question. Also, with regard to lighting, I believe you presented the renderings as the expert tonight under oath. So those renderings show visible light from a distance, correct?
Correct, it's ambient skylight.
Okay, but it's visible from the field lighting. So the previous expert, Mr. Zeller, said no lighting, but he's agreeing that you see the lighting now. So you have a discontinuity here between experts. I think the residents owe.
You're making a comment. You're asserting that you feel that there is a differentiation between the testimony of the lighting expert and the architecture expert. If you have a question about architecture, please ask it.
Okay, I think your point's incorrect because she cited that Mr. Zeller said that rendering's correct.
And the applicant.
So are you giving testimony that it's correct?
I'm guiding the board in the proceedings. The applicant stipulated that they will be providing a follow-up letter from Mr. Zeller addressing the fact that they cited a private conversation that the architect had with them. So
Okay.
we'll be providing a follow-up.
And Mr.
I believe I
just want to clear this up a little. She's testifying that there is some ambient lighting, that the twilight type lighting that the renderers threw in, that is unrelated to the lights. And that's where you're thinking there is a inconsistency.
No, no, I'm not.
Okay.
Visible lighting is obtrusive lighting to the neighborhood. That's where I'm getting at, and to my neighborhood, okay?
The lights
So,
that are over, like a halo over the lights are ambient. That's all we're saying.
well, with an ambient or whatever, it's visible to the surrounding area.
It's the sky.
So can we have well, I think Mr. Zoll should be here in person so we could question him, Mr. Attorney.
No, he was here and you were offered the opportunity.
But he said we wouldn't see lighting, but we're seeing it. So he's lying in effect under oath.
Well, he didn't prepare the renderings.
Public comment. He's the expert who gave a misrepresentation to the board
No,
and
that's
the
not
residents.
accurate.
So we just live with it?
Please, could you ask a question?
Opportunity to make a public comment and assert what you feel is a differentiation between the two experts' testimony. That's the purpose of the public comment. Right now, the purpose of what is being open to the public is for them to ask questions of the applicant's professionals. You'll be offered the opportunity to be heard once the applicant closes their case.
Okay. So I guess that's why we need a lighting expert to be on the record. We got like 4 different lighting experts, but okay. All right. So can we have one?
Could you please ask a question?
Can we have a lighting expert?
No, we
That
have,
is under oath?
we have an opinion coming from the lighting expert regarding the testimony provided by the witness here. And that's where we're going to go from now on. And if you have a comment at the end, you can comment on it then. In the meantime, if you have a question for the landscaper or the architect, please ask a question.
Okay, but Mr. Chairman, obtrusive things are the problem why the residents are here, and you're giving short shrift to one of the major points.
Respectfully, you will be offered the opportunity to make public comment once the applicant rests their case. I think that there's a bit of a misconception here in that the applicant is here to present their case. The public has opportunities to ask questions of the applicant's professionals, and then you will have an opportunity to object to the application formally during a public comment period. If you feel that the applicant has not properly provided the board with enough evidence to grant the site plan approval, you will be entitled to say that to the board during the public comment period. Okay, but right now, the sole purpose of opening to the public is for you to get clarification from their professionals on the testimony that they gave.
Okay, so again, to clarify, you're showing there's visible light,
Correct.
correct? Okay, in contradiction to the press
You're
expert.
free to assert that during the public comment portion.
Okay, I hope someone sees it, but
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we're going to adjourn the meeting to the next available date. Sonny, do we have that date?
Mr. Raziopi,
Yes,
I received an email from your office asking for a special meeting.
yes,
Is November 7th good for you?
yes, it is. Thank you.
November 7th?
November 7th.
I don't think we are required back because they finished questions.
So, Mr. Flynn, do you want to, yeah.
So for any members of the public wishing to ask further questions and or comment on the application, it will be heard at a special meeting on November 7th at 7 p.m. in this courtroom. No further notice will be provided by the applicant.
Mr. Flynn, we need an extension of time.
Yeah, and of course, the applicant consent through the next hearing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So that ends the hearing for this evening. The board has one other item on the agenda.
I think we.
We'll just give it a minute.
Yeah, I'm not clear either, but it's.
You were great.
No, that's for the next time. You're not that enforced.
That's amazing. My wife and I
You just get promoted.
Thank you
very
very go
much.
back
Great
for
job.
our daughter. She's 2 months now. We're hoping to go for 1 year. Hawaii.
Could everyone please be quiet so we can finish our meeting? We're still in session. We're still in session. Yeah.
We're still in a public session.
We're in public session. Next item on the agenda is the calendar review.
Sure I do. Yeah, we can.
So I believe that Sonia distributed the calendar dates for
Could everyone please be quiet? We're trying to finish our meeting.
Get the gavel. Please.
Could everyone please be quiet? We're still trying to conduct our meeting.
So
Thank you.
Sonia has distributed the meeting dates for the 2023 planning board schedule. We did look at the various holidays and made adjustments as necessary. And I don't know if anyone has any questions or suggestions, but we're looking for, I guess, a motion to approve those dates. Okay, Sonia corrected me. We're not approved. It'll be formally approved in January, but just if there's any comments, this will be going in for the calendar printing.
We're 100% positive we are not intruding on any holidays, religious holidays.
There were holidays that I didn't even know existed.
Not
on
ones.
our calendar that we cross-checked.
We're not having a meeting after sunset of a particular holiday either.
Checked and rechecked, triple checked.
Juneteenth, the holiday for the township?
Yeah, but
It is now.
It's a holiday? Okay, so it's on a meeting date. June
Well,
19th.
it's observed by the state and federal. There are two different dates, and we observe a different date than the feds, I think.
Instead of June the 19th. Friday.
Ah.
Before. We're going by the state, not by the federal holiday.
Okay.
So the state,
thank you.
the state holiday is on a Friday, the 16th. The federal one. The federal
Interesting.
one is on the 12th, and that's what we're doing.
Wow.
I just want to make sure we.
The school calendar, I'm gonna get mad.
Have a motion on the resolution?
We're not doing that.
No motion.
We don't? Okay.
You'll vote on it during rework.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question. I know
Yes.
that last year when we had, about a year ago, we had a pretty comprehensive conversation around when we would want to start and when we would want to end. And we had agreed as a board that we would start at 6:30, so that we could end earlier. Tonight's another night when most of us won't be home till 11. But I'm wondering why it is that we didn't then, and then we were, I think, informed that no, 6:30 doesn't work. We can do 7. But I'm never understood, and so this really just a genuine question. Why and who? What was the? I don't see any other place using this room before us. So to the extent that that got moved a half hour, it's not a huge thing. But I was always curious as to why we did not, when we agreed as a board to meet at 6:30, why that wasn't why we were not able to do that.
I think we were trying to provide some consistency with the other boards and the township committee meeting, but I think that's open to discussion. I mean, there was some issues in the past when we did try and go earlier that there were people that were commuting to the city and were not able to get back in time. But I'm not aware of anyone that's got that condition going on right now.
Tim, you want to comment?
We had also previously had EDAC meetings before this meeting. And then we were also trying to get consistency with all the advisory boards, planning board, the township committee meetings that they would all start at the same time for the residents that they're coming to a township meeting. They all, no matter what meeting you were going to, it would start at 7 p.m.
I think there is value in consistency, but I also think there's value on the land use board, at least this one, in an earlier start.
I appreciate that, but for someone who commutes sometimes too, and we have to make sure we can have people on this board in the future who can actually make the meetings. It's going to make it tougher for us if we're trying to get people to serve on this board and they can't make it after work, or they
You
don't
think
have enough time.
6:30 is not doable for most people?
If I were commuting in the city, no. Most people get home at 7:30 if they're commuting into the city.
You think 7 is,
And it's, yeah, and it's not, if it's parents and they've got a kid, then both of them have to be back because one of them has to be home for the kid. That I'm in that category, right? So I actually couldn't do 6:30 when we were talking about what times we could do. 7 o'clock was the earliest I can do, and you notice I come in at like 6:59 and 58 seconds. So consistently. Today I ran and I got here a little before you, right? Yeah, because it was raining hard.
I think if we try to end on time and are stricter on the time constraints at the podium, then I think that will alleviate a lot of the concerns, I would hope.
I think we really
Yeah.
need to do a better job of podium.
Yeah, it's hard when you have testimony done and you want to have the witnesses who won't be coming back next time, and yet there are questions, and then you're balancing, the applicants.
We should have like a how-to sheet, oh, you want to express your displeasure with something. Here's how to phrase that as a question.
Well, I think I will say that a lot of my other boards do limit each public questioning and public comment to, let's say, 5 minutes. I know that does impose an issue where, is someone going to start a stopwatch timer on their phone? But I do think it's important to perhaps have a public portion disclaimer and even set some ground rules before we open it, because tonight ran late, I think, for those concerns.
Right, because most people are within 5 minutes, but then there are a few.
But I mean, in fairness, there's a lot of repeat questions. There's questions that have been answered. There's,
A lot of non-questions.
a lot of yes.
And then circling back, they just, when one person's done, they just go back and get back in line,
I typically, my style, and I think, I don't want to speak for Steve, but his style too, typically is to, we recognize that not every member of the public's able to effectively cross-examine a witness, so that, their questions are going to be couched in comments, but we do reach a point where we tip the scales a little bit. I think it'd be helpful to, again, a time frame I found very, very useful in my experience.
We can try that. It's a 5-minute thing. I'm fine with that.
Bylaws to the planning board, right, that speak to these things.
You can do that.
They don't exist?
No, you can do
Yes,
that.
there is bylaws. We do have bylaws. What do those bylaws say?
We do?
I would have to go back and check.
We do?
Maybe you can
Okay.
send them to us. So we can review them. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Anything else? We have to leave open any members of the public here for public comment. Seeing none, we'll close.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good night, everyone.
Opposed?